All righty, let's do roll call then.
Vice Chair Targ, Commissioner Krasinski,
Here.
Commissioner Brothers,
Here.
Commissioner Kopsil,
Here.
and Chair Golden.
Here. Okay, first thing on the agenda, as usual, is oral communications, which is anything that is not on the agenda for tonight. If people would like to speak, please let me know. Oh, we have one in the audience. Please come up and state your name.
You might need to turn on that microphone.
Okay. Bob Adams, 11 Applewood. I have two items. One is I see a new face in the room, and heard a rumor that we have a new planning director, building and planning director, and my hope is that this is who it is. Is that true? Mr. Herrera, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it. Now we're hoping that you can get us over the line. The line I'm talking about, the housing element.
That's on the agenda.
The second item is actually not on the agenda, and that's part of what I wanted to make sure to bring it up. And if you guys will turn to page 86 of your packet. And if you recall, in the last meeting, I spoke after Tim spoke about the church, and then before Bill. And if you look at page 86, you will not see my name nor my comments. And my question is that something that was attended to? Because I had two major comments. Or is that something that was skipped because my comments were not on the list? So I don't need an answer. I'm just trying to understand what happened. So thank you. I'll have another comment when we get to the regular time. So welcome.
Thank you. Actually, take a little break here. And Adrian, did you want to introduce Romero for us?
Yes, it would be my pleasure. I'd like to introduce everybody to our new Planning and Building Director, Romeo Herrera. We're thrilled to have him on board. He just started last week and he's had to leap right in. He's here to join us tonight and start to get up to speed on all the work the good work that we've been doing. So would you like to say a few words, Romeo?
Sure. Thank you. Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. My name is Romeo Herrera. I am the new Director and Portola Valley's Chief Building Official. I am glad to be here. And just like Adrian said, I think my first day I already had emails and phone calls. So it'll be a pleasure to work with everyone and answer questions. And I have a little bit of an understanding of what my undertaking is going to be. And like I said, I look forward to working with everyone. Thank you.
All righty, let's take a look and see if we have any other. I see one hand up online, 7562. Could we put them on, please? Okay, I see. I'm not hearing anything though. There we
Can you
go.
hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
Great, thank you. Caroline Hendricks. Just like Mr. Adams, I had a question about an issue that came up, was raised March 20th, and I don't know if it was actually answered. It was a question by Karen Askey. Why are our schools property, Corte Madera and Ormondale, included in the RE zoning and not included as school district property on the zoning map? And would it make sense to do so? So that I have not heard an answer, but perhaps I missed it. There's so much information. So if you have an answer, I would like to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Do we have anybody else that has a oral comment for us? I'm not seeing anything online, so we will go to our regular agenda. which is, of course, a discussion of the zoning amendments in support of the housing element. So do we have a staff presentation?
Yes, I'll just bring that up. One moment. Thank you. All right, good evening, commissioners. Thank you. And thank you to members of the public for your patience as we worked through a camera issue in the schoolhouse. So again, we're here today to consider the zoning code and zoning map amendments. The general format, I'll get through my staff presentation. We'll get to some questions, move to public comment, and then the planning commission will have an opportunity to discuss. So just a reminder of our staff and consultants. This is the full list, and then those with orange arrows are either here in the schoolhouse or joining us via Zoom. So I'm here along with Romeo tonight. He's now officially part of the team, which is great. And then over Zoom, we have town attorney Catherine Engberg, and then our consultants from Lisa Wise Consulting, Monica Sidlick and David Bergman are here as well. So just a little bit of background to bring everybody up to speed. The zoning code amendments are required to implement the housing element. They're the first step, and they do so in two ways. The amendments bring the code into conformance with state law and implement various housing element programs. And the amendments also act to rezone several parcels to new zoning classifications that we've identified in our adequate sites inventory in our housing element. Without rezoning, the sites do not become available to be developed at the proposed densities and affordability levels. So along with these rezonings, the town may adopt objective development and design standards, and that's administered via a non-discretionary ministerial review process. So due to SB 330, which is the Housing Crisis Act, and that came into effect in January 2020, jurisdictions cannot impose or enforce non-objective design and development standards that come into effect after January 2020. So all development and design standards in our draft code must be obviously objective, and they cannot introduce constraints to the development of these housing sites. So the necessity of timely adoption of our code amendments. As everybody knows, our housing element was decertified by the HCD as of March 26th of this year. And basically, they've decertified because we haven't rezoned yet. Once we've rezoned, HCD will consider recertifying our element. Our understanding is that the whole element won't be under review. It's just simply these rezones. So we're hoping for a quick turnaround once we resubmit. Of course, because we're no longer in substantial compliance with state law, we're again vulnerable to builder's remedy. We've been in this position before. It's not new, but it does mean that the town couldn't disapprove certain housing projects or condition them that would render them infeasible. So a lot of work has gone on in a very short period of time. I'm just going to recap all of those meetings so everybody knows where we've been up to tonight. So our first meeting was on March 20th. Planning Commission met to hold a discussion. They did give staff and consultants a fair amount of feedback and suggestions, but they wanted to expand the review process and bring ASCC into the mix. So ASCC quickly turned around and met on March 25th. They did a comprehensive review of the draft amendments. They held a workshop style session to kind of work through everything. They discussed a lot of the technical development and design standards. And they also appointed a subcommittee to compile all that feedback in an efficient way and forward it on to Planning Commission. Planning Commission and ASCC held a joint meeting on April 3rd to discuss all of ASCC's cumulative feedback. It was agreed at that point that the ASCC should meet once more for an additional workshop. So they met on April 8th and they further discussed their feedback and recommendations. They struck an additional subcommittee. So the first one would work on the multifamily recommendations, and then the second would work on mixed use. And then most recently, Planning Commission met on April 17th to go through ASCC's comprehensive feedback. So in that feedback was the introduction of several technical changes to the development standards for both mixed use and multifamily zones. Those included such standards as floor area ratio, landscape area ratio, coverage area ratio, and daylight plane. So because these standards are so technical, it was determined that we really did need staff and consultants to conduct site-specific feasibility analyses to ensure that even with these development standards in place, full development of these sites would still be possible. So there'd be no constraints being introduced. So the Planning Commission also on the 17th struck a subcommittee composed of 2 planning commissioners and 2 ASCC members. And then they were tasked with engaging with staff and consultants, just doing a back and forth and working through all of the recommendations and looking at testing results. Commissioners also at that time decided to create a list for future consideration, and that's to track all other items related to the zoning code and zoning map amendments that are priorities shared by Planning Commission and ASCC, but at this time beyond the scope of the amendments required to implement the housing element. So the scope of changes we are reviewing tonight, so this is a revised draft code in the meeting packet. So they're shown in track changes. Blue text shows the original amendments that were first reviewed by Planning Commission on March 20th. And then you'll see in red are the text revisions requested by the subcommittee. So this is just a brief list of the modifications. It includes additions to the definitions chapter, the addition of the new development standards we were just discussing, addition of development standards like minimum and maximum unit sizes and changes to building height maximums, the inclusion of housing site-specific development standards. And so that's just standards that are already spelled out in the housing element. We've just included them, pulled them into the zoning code just for consistency. There was also some elimination of objective design standards that were considered potentially too cost prohibitive to potential developers down the line. We eliminated some redundant language having to do with the very high fire severity zone. And there's just a variety of other miscellaneous edits to fix up phrasing and correct typos. So the results of the site testing, consultants did complete that site testing and provided the results to the Planning Commission ASCC subcommittee. There were potential constraints revealed. However, due to a miscommunication, the values that were used in the site testing for daylight plane were incorrect. So the subcommittee advised staff and consultants, we want to repeat this site testing based on the corrected values. So retesting has begun by our consultants, and we anticipate having those results available to the subcommittee to reconsider by the end of the week. Thursday, afternoon earliest, maybe latest is Friday morning, but we're going to get that in short order. So the idea being Planning Commission might consider this evening to continue the meeting to a date certain. We have 3 potential meeting dates available to us to consider. So it'd be next Monday, May 6th, Tuesday, the 7th, or Wednesday, the 8th. The 8th is now available because Town Council canceled their regular meeting. So that slot is available for consideration. So at the next meeting scheduled for a date certain, Planning Commission will again review the corrected results and assess whether any further revisions are required. But for tonight's meeting, what are we doing? We're looking at our revised draft code, discussing any outstanding items that commissioners would like to raise. Commissioners would also like to talk about this list for future consideration to make sure it's complete. And then, of course, if the commission decides to continue to a date certain, we'll determine what day that will be. So next steps, this is the revised tentative review and adoption meeting schedule. Planning Commission will likely be meeting for a continued meeting next week. The first Town Council meeting will be on May 22nd. And when we last considered this schedule, we thought that Council would meet again at a regular meeting in June, but our understanding from Council is that it's a priority to get this review done in May. So Council would be scheduling a special meeting for May 29th. So that's it. Any questions for staff and consultants? Please let us know. Thank you.
We're going to do the usual format. So go ahead.
Yes, the question that I would have is that, assuming that we were to move forward with direction this evening, would the ASCC be able to review and then return a document back to us with any modifications and with the addition of the reevaluation of the density and the feasibility analysis, such that we would be able to review and pass a reso and get it to council in time for the meeting on the 29th.
22nd.
22nd,
On the 22nd.
Right.
So the second meeting is on the 29th,
9.
second meeting.
So Nicholas, is your question, the entire ASCC or the subcommittee?
Well, more is better with respect. So the entire, and then maybe we dial it back if that doesn't work. So the full ASCC.
My understanding was that we would return the results to the subcommittee and the subcommittee would confer and give us direction. If my understanding is incorrect.
No, I think so, although we had delayed sort of picking the dates on the meeting, so we're sort of on the fly here, looking at Friday afternoon, maybe for the subcommittee to get together, or Saturday, but we haven't checked with them yet on that. But certainly my intention would be that we've had the ASCC have a chance to really review it.
Yeah, that is to say, if we can, if it's possible to fit that in.
Right.
that We have a committee that has expertise
Absolutely.
in the area that I know that I certainly do not.
Definitely the timing is really tight, but based on what we've heard from our consultant Lisa Wise, we can make it happen, that we'll get the site testing back. The subcommittee's been very quick and flexible in the past, so we're hoping they'll be able to meet in short order and review and give staff direction, because we're going to have to put out a packet. I will have to put out a packet on Friday for next week's meeting. So I'll need all of that content so that we're ready to go.
If we haven't said it lately, we appreciate it.
Oh. I wasn't looking for a compliment, but thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate it.
So there's discussion to follow on that. That we'll do in the
So
discussion
so
part.
discussion follow on that would be, my recommendation would be for staff and maybe the chair of the planning commission to confer with the chair and vice chair of the ASCC, determine what's feasible and what doesn't break staff and the ASCC. And if it's not possible to do that, then have the subcommittee review it and just place more pressure on that hardworking group.
And for me, it kind of depends as we review this. If we have extensive comments and changes, it seems like it needs to go back to the subcommittee and we need time. But if our comments are minor, we can just make a little list and then it goes to staff and comes back. I feel like it doesn't need, for me, it kind of depends how much we stir.
So if we don't
stir the
mind,
pot.
can we circle back around on this as part of the discussion, get our questions out and get our oral comments, and then make sure we've kind of agreed on how we think we want to move forward so that we can move forward.
I think that makes sense. I think that we hear what's possible
Yep.
and then we'll be in a position to judge what's needed.
I think it's also important to remember that this could have bigger or lesser impacts, but it was just a single part of the modeling that has to be redone. It's not like we had to go back to ground zero. And so it's going to be a fairly discrete piece of work that was discovered by the subcommittee made of the planning commissioners and the AFCC people, and then in turn sent back down. So I think that's important to understand the scope of what the initial problem was.
Do we have other questions?
I do.
Well then, please go.
I guess my first question is, what are our options for approving the resolution tonight? For example, if we adjusted or removed the daylight plane development standards.
Catherine, do you mind jumping in on that?
Could you repeat the question? My volume was down a little bit on that.
What are our options for approving the resolution tonight? For example, if we either adjusted or removed the daylight plane development standards?
Yeah, the item could be approved tonight. I did go back to the agenda language to make sure it was broad enough to cover, because obviously this has been noticed as a public hearing to adopt the resolution. Given the number of meetings, the staff report recommendation is to continue the item, but the item is noticed broadly enough for adoption tonight.
And I mean, I guess I'm trying to understand it, as far as I understand, we're kind of waiting on the, what's the term they use, this site testing? But the hangups seem to be related only to daylight plane development standards. So if those were removed, are we good to go in terms of site testing?
I guess I'll defer to the consultants on that. I thought you were mostly asking about the Brown Act question.
Yeah, Monica, I'll get you to just jump in case I've missed anything, but my understanding is that the big sticking point in terms of the introduction of constraints was was based on the daylight plane testing, which of course we know the values were incorrect. But so if we were to eliminate the daylight plane altogether, would there be any site constraints?
Monica, are you
So
going to take
that's
that?
a question for me. I'm sorry. There's also the issue of some non-conforming issues on one site in one zone. In my view, that sort of needed to be resolved, and that I would consider a constraint. And that's all.
Can you tell us what those are?
Shall I give it a try? So here's my cut on it. So there was one piece in their recommendations that said, if we have the maximum size on the teasing property that's currently proposed, that makes their current building non-conforming. And the recommendation was that we should have a size that would allow that to continue to be a conforming building as opposed to putting the burden of a existing but non-conforming on them. So that was the one piece. The other pieces, though, that kind of concern me is the recommendations we got back from the consultants indicated that they thought we could have, if we eliminate that, they recommended eliminating daylight plane, but we don't actually have in my mind, a layout that then supports the density that we could show to HCD and say, yes, we're meeting our densities. The general belief is that we do, but I haven't seen a layout that I would feel like we could present to HCD. So your question is kind of a maybe.
I'm seeing, Adrian, is that right, that we don't have, if we eliminate the daylight plane, I guess my understanding was we are okay in terms of the site testing.
Yeah, the daylight plane was the big sticking point. It's true that we need to also resolve the issue of potential nonconformance.
But John's saying something else.
Yes, he's discussed, when we did the site testing, our consultants did lay out potential site organization of buildings, like how a site could be laid out. And John, are you just reacting to that site testing that you didn't think there was a viable site design?
So the input we got was that in order to get a viable density on the site, we would need to eliminate daylight plane. But we did not see a layout that said,
But that's
we've
why I'm asking that
eliminated
question.
it, and here's the layout that actually supports that. That was
Well, let me,
the rework.
I kind of have another related question, like this site testing. As far as I understand, there's no layout that's published that appears in the documents that we pass. Seems like it's just a thumbs up, thumbs down from staff. And so could you maybe explain that to me a little bit more? Like, I guess my other question is, what if we just pass the resolution as is with the daylight plane? In the meantime, staff does the site testing and then tells the town council if it works or not.
That was an option we considered. My understanding from the subcommittee is they did wish to see the results as opposed to just kind of passing it along for it to be, if there was issues, for them to be resolved in between planning commission and town council.
So the answer is yes, we could, I think, directly, and then maybe in discussion, we can decide if that's something we want to do.
Yeah. Okay, I have more questions.
Okay, go for it.
In 1804-115, the rounding is kind of weird. It says, whenever the result of a calculation so this is about density.
And
How-
what
how-
page, can you tell us what red
Yeah,
page?
page 12, red page 12.
Yes, thank you.
But basically, so it says, when the density calculation contains a fraction of a whole number, the result shall be rounded up to the nearest whole number, which I interpret as, for example, if the density is 2.1, it rounds up to 3, which I think is weird. And I'm just trying to understand, is that what it means? And is that the intention of what we're trying to achieve?
Okay, so we did talk about this a little bit internally, so I'm going to ask Monica to answer this question.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. In response to your question, Commissioner Krasinski, no, that's not the intent. If the result of the calculation units per acre.
Monica,
Yeah.
can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that.
I think
Thank
it's
you.
the mic, closer to the mic, yeah.
She needs-
Yeah, so in response to your question, Commissioner Krasinski, that's absolutely not the intent. So if the calculation of dwelling units per acre turns out to be 2.5, that doesn't mean it's 3. The cells in the tables where the development standards are laid out that have this sort of 3 different standards, that was an attempt to, as closely as possible, to implement to reflect the subcommittee's recommendations. And
Are you-
so,
Sorry, could I just, are you saying the intent is to round to the nearest whole number? Because that sounds fine.
no,
Go
no. So I am saying that, yes, thank you for pointing that out. And no, we do not intend for, if the calculation of density yields a decimal, it's usually expressed in a tenth, that it would be rounded up. The reason for that wording was to try to implement as closely as possible, reflect the recommendations, the edits of the subcommittee. And in order to write this, we would recommend striking that last line of the definition of density and instead changing those cells to say, for example, the FAR would be one value for an FAR of 2, another value for an FAR of 2.1 to 3, and another value of 3.1 to 4. Effectively, it does the same thing when using FAR to meet that standard, but that would avoid what you, Commissioner Krasinski, just pointed out, that no, we don't want to say density of 1.5 meets a minimum density of 2.0. We don't want to say that.
I mean, as it's written, it says rounded up to the nearest whole number. I think it would be reasonable to just say round to the nearest number, which would mean that 2.1 would round to 2, 2.6 would round to 3. I don't understand your explanation. Is that the intention or not? What is 2.1?
No, it's not. So, uh, uh, the intention was to, as closely as possible, reflect the input of the ASCC or the subcommittee in establishing this scale of standards for FAR, LAR, CAR, and IAR. The direction was, for example, have one value for the lower end of the density range and one value for the higher end of the density range. And instead, we assigned a value for each density to make it simple, to make it simple so that you knew what your FAR. It's easy to find your FAR, not your FAR, the FAR, the CIR, the LAR, the IAR, to just assign 3 values.
Right,
I don't understand the answer
can
to
I
my
take
question.
a-
Like, should
Can I take a
2.1?
try?
Okay.
When they wrote what the FARs are, they wrote, if it's 2 dwelling units per acre, then the max is 0.1. If it's 3 dwelling units per acre, the maximum 0.16. Those are whole numbers. So the ASCC, in order to match those exactly, wanted this definition to come out to be whole numbers. I think what Monica's saying is another way to do it is to allow those numbers to just be their accurate number in the density units, but then in the FAR say, if it's 2 to 2.99 dwelling units per acre, you can have max 0.1. If it's 3 to 3.9, so put ranges in
I don't think
FAR
that's
plus
necessary. I
others.
think we just need to specify what the rounding
Mm.
should be. I mean, I guess we can revisit this in discussion, if it's
Mhm.
discussion, but maybe my question
Yeah.
is, can we, if we were to say the results shall be rounded to the nearest whole number instead of up,
Mhm.
does staff see any problem with that? So 2.1 would round to 2, 2.6 would round to 3. I think it's fine.
Mhm.
I think that's a question for the subcommittee. and
Right.
That's
Well,
ASCC's
wait, Why is it
intent.
subcommittee?
Because the subcommittee has 2 ASCC members on it.
Okay, but now it's a question for the planning
Right,
commission.
Right. No, I understand. What I mean by it's a question for them is like what the intent is of the FAR. So if we have a value of 2.6, that means we round up to 3. That means you are afforded a greater FAR. Is that okay? Or do you want, if it ranges from 2 dwelling acres up to 2.99, 2.9 dwelling acres, that should be captured under 0.1, a lesser FAR?
Yeah, regardless what the intent was, it sounds like if we made that rule, it would be okay. And so
What-
I'm fine moving on.
What you're
Okay.
saying is very straightforward. It's a
Okay.
straightforward solution. I just want to make sure that we're not misunderstanding an intention behind the FAR.
Okay. Okay.
If I may, I think we also might want to keep in mind, let's say your density calculation, let's say your minimum density is 2 dwelling units an acre. And you have a site plan and you calculate, the fraction of the number of dwelling units per acre and you get 1.6. Do you want to consider that as meeting your minimum density?
My
Probably not.
question was, is that a problem? Is that a problem if we decide that?
I would say so, yes.
So what's the problem with that? So,
Because you're not achieving the two.
okay, so,
Because the
so,
minimum density is 2, you have to meet 2. Maybe your
Right.
minimum, maybe you can have 1.95 and you could say, okay, that counts as meeting the minimum density of 2.
I mean,
But-
that's why I was asking the question. So, I mean, it sounds like you're saying to satisfy our housing element that says we have a minimum density of 2, we are not allowed to allow 1.1, we're not allowed to allow 1.8, it really has to be 2. And then, so we should change the language to specify that. You're nodding, okay.
Yeah, I'd strike that
I'm thinking we log that as a That's got to go back to the subcommittee to make it clear, because it's clearly not clear.
Well, it doesn't have to go back to the subcommittee.
Yeah.
We're the planning commission. we
But it
can-
needs
we can make
discussion
that
here.
change.
Yeah, of course.
Draft it.
So what are the implications? What are the implications of rounding up in all cases? And it would be to have larger units presumably, right? Or to have,
Yes, that effectively, yes.
Or
I mean,
that-
you would be at a higher range of FAR. So you would have more floor
It
area.
would mean someone could have 1.1 units and that would satisfy a minimum density of 2 units.
right, so you would be, in principle, you would be reducing the density within, and that may or may not be okay, depending on,
Right, and that was my question, and I heard the answer that that's not okay
I don't,
from Mon.
I don't know that that's a knowable question at this. I don't know the answer is knowable at this time.
Why is it not noble? I mean, it's
Because I
illegal.
think, because you would be reducing the density, you would be reducing the plausible density, the possible density, by increasing the FAR, and that becomes a modeling question. And I don't know how I would do that right now.
Okay, let's revisit.
Mhm.
Um, okay, okay, so in a couple meetings, I asked about developable area.
Mhm.
And I see now that in table 18-15-050,
What page?
I don't know, that's the main table. Page,
35, maybe? You had a question about it too.
Looks good.
yeah, 35. So there's note number 1 down at the bottom, which now for Glen Oaks, says that the density and the other car and far and so on are relative to the developable area specified in the housing element. So my remaining question is, in our housing element, we also specify a developable area for 4370 Alpine and for Christ Church. We specify developable area that's a subset of the total area. So do we also need to have similar language for those sites?
So when we talk about the developable area in the housing element, it was when we were conducting feasibility analyses of those sites. We were thinking, given basic site constraints, setbacks, what would the resulting likely developable area be? And so we did that for all of our sites just to get a sense of it. What sort of came up over our past meetings was concern about Glen Oaks because it's such a large parcel, 17 acres. And so there was concerns raised about, well, how do we control this? Couldn't additional units potentially result on this site? Staff, I mean, we tried to relay that there are natural constraints, such as very extreme constraints based on the creek setback, and the scenic corridor setback, that automatically reduce down the developable area. Being that as it may, a developable area isn't something we could hold a developer to. It's what we consider based on assessment, that's the likelihood. We couldn't say to a developer, I'm saying more, Commissioner Krasinski, than you've asked, but I think it's useful. We could not hold a developer to that. So for example, if Glen Oaks said, actually, instead of there being 4 developable acres, we've been able, based on, actual site analysis, to get 4.5 developable acres. And that would be completely viable, and we couldn't refuse an application based on that very specific site testing. Again, because of the size of the site, there was concern about that. Well, can we hold developers to the developable area? Can we state as such in our zoning code? And no, we can't. We can't do that. We can, if we want, just to restate what we have in our housing element, which the commission has advised in various instances. Well, if it's in the housing element, restate it here, just for consistency. So staff, we didn't actually think we needed to have this footnote in here, because as you rightly point out, developable area is contemplated for other sites. And again, this is like what we expect the outcome to be for those sites. But I understand what you're saying. There's an inconsistency here. Why are we calling out the Glen Oaks developable area, but not the others? That's a good question. And perhaps the solution is to just take that out.
So are you saying, like, Glen Oaks is, I think, 17 acres or something like that, and we have 4 developable in the housing element? And I thought that this note that was added would mean, it says that 4 acres are developable, max 4 dwelling units per acre, so there would be max 16 dwelling units?
Right.
Are you saying that it actually doesn't, there are no constraints and there could be 68 dwelling units?
No.
Because it's 17 acres?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the note just simply says, based on preliminary site analysis described in the housing element, it is estimated that the actual developable area of the 17-acre site would be around 4 acres. It was just restating.
But, okay, I mean, the density otherwise is for if we say 4 dwelling units per acre, the acres there are for an entire parcel, right?
Right.
So Glen Oaks could develop 17 acres times 4 is 68.
If only the site didn't have such a restrictive creek setback of 50 feet and the scenic corridor setback of 75 feet.
But if we allowed, I know we're not doing this, but let's say we allowed 4-story and 4-story, then on the 4 good acres, they could put gobs of units and get towards 68, right? I mean, I feel like we're only constraining it because of the zoning we're doing where we're saying, well, 1 story and.
That's true. Yeah. If we were contemplating a different type of development product, like something more dense, then it would be a different story. But in the conversations that we had with the landowner, this was a smaller scale type housing arrangement would be desired. And then of course, the community feels the same way about that site. So that's sort of how we ended up where we did.
But so you're saying we're not able to specify that the developable area of the site is 4 acres and constrain it to that?
Right. So we can't say, property owner, you are only allowed to develop 4 acres. That is what we are stating. We can't put a constraint like that on a landowner. But based on good analysis, we don't think they would come to much different of a conclusion once they conduct their own site analysis of what can we actually do here.
Well, but even if they only develop on 4 acres, the calculations would be based on the entire site, so they could put 68 units on 4 acres.
But then they get hit by the height.
You get hit by the height.
Well, there's a height restriction too.
Sure, but, okay, fine. Okay, but you're saying this note is, to me, it means the note is somewhat meaningless. What is, and that's kind of what you said, I guess.
I don't disagree with you.
Okay. Okay. Next question. Okay, in that table, same table, it specifies the unit size, including garage space. And I asked about this in the previous meeting. How does this work for a shared garage? And I understand maybe what the intent of the subcommittee was, but I don't see it written up in the code. So my question is, as the code is currently written, how would a shared garage be handled in terms of the unit size constraint? And or is it underspecified and we need to define that?
are we including garage spacing in the, and if we are, if I may build on that, the, it sounds like we're including garage space in FAR, and to my understanding in general, FAR addresses usable floor space, and that typically excludes, for example, unfinished basements and garages.
I have that
And-
as an
Because it's kind of a separate thing. I don't know, it kind of piggybacks onto the, it's like, you don't get to that question if you take out garages altogether. Okay? Yeah, so I think that question is a subset of. It's
Okay.
It's how I'm doing on the question.
I'd ask Monica or David to weigh in on this question, please.
Yeah, certainly. So the direction from the subcommittee was to include garages as part of the unit size when calculating maximum unit, but the direction was not to include spaces dedicated to parking as in the FAR calculation.
So you're saying, so if there was a shared garage, are you saying that that would not be included in the unit size?
Yeah, it would be. It would be like proportional, you know, if it's shared by 4 units, then I guess the a quarter of that garage space would be counted toward the unit size for each unit.
Of the whole
But
garage?
yeah, because so
I
that
would, let me just jump in here and add real quickly that it is not typical practice for municipalities to count parking spaces as part of FAR. Generally, that is because off-street parking requirements are included as part of the development standard. And but in this case, because of concerns about massing and site coverage, has been a request to include parking as part of FAR.
I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
not part of FAR, but as part of the unit size.
Unit size, excuse me, of unit size, because there was concern about unit size. So it's a little bit of a unique situation because it's not typical, but the way that you would manage something like that in a shared situation would be to apportion on a pro rata basis the parts of the parking facility that are dedicated to the unit. So if we're going to count it as part of the unit, it would be apportioned on a pro rata basis.
Oh, and if it's not dedicated, then I guess it wouldn't count any unit?
I'm trying to understand that. So, no, if you wouldn't, so you're suggesting that the parking is a requirement of the development standard.
Well, I heard you say that like the spaces that were dedicated to.
Not space, the total area. So it's not a question of parking assignment. It's a question of if we build 1,000 square foot parking facility and we have 2 units sharing it, each one is apportioned 500 square feet towards its
Okay.
building size.
Okay, I think I got that one. I guess now, I don't know if we got the answer about FAR. So does FAR include garage space? I see that we refer to elsewhere in the code. My understanding from there is that it probably doesn't include garage space. Is that right?
Well,
The-
we
the-
haven't altered.
the wording
the
there, right, sorry, the wording is like floor area permanently allocated for parking is excluded. I don't know if a garage is considered permanently allocated for parking or not.
Monica, I think you were starting to answer.
Yeah, we haven't altered the definition of FAR or the how it's interpreted in the town.
Okay, so we need to make an amendment there.
No,
I'm just asking
No.
what it currently means. So garage, it sounds like is not included in FAR.
Oh, pardon me.
that
Okay,
right?
so the garage is not included in FAR is my understanding. Yes, it is not.
Correct.
Okay.
Is it present in the version that we have here? Is FAR established under
Yeah, it's elsewhere in the code.
54.05?
And that's what I read that has this comment about floor area permanently allocated for parking is excluded.
Hold on.
I'm sorry,
Um,
did we get that, that notation?
The what?
Sorry,
Is that clear now?
To me, it is.
Yeah, okay, okay.
okay, okay. What,
Excludes the things like basements and the usual types of things, basements, elevators, elevator pits, engineering rooms, stuff like that. Non-usable space. Am I?
Maybe the way to say it is, this code doesn't change the meaning of it.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's what it said.
I was going back to FAR definitions, trying to make sure, I mean, I think you're flagging, do we need to double check the FAR definition?
I believe we already took a look at that and we aren't proposing to make any alterations.
Right.
To the code as the code already defines it.
So the question here about what was where, but I don't think they could fix that.
I guess this is a question for the subcommittee. In that table, the max floor area for a single building is 4,574. Where did that number come from?
It's the Stanford duplex size.
Okay. This is a typo in that table, the IAR for the 2 dwelling units per acre is listed as 0.90, but it's supposed to be 0.09.
Right, we'll fix that. Thank you.
Another small thing, let me get the page. Okay, on page 42, the red line that was added under building colors, a maximum of 4 colors are permitted. It already says that so that's item D. It already says that on item A.
There's a,
And
that got misentered.
What?
That was misentered from that's a correction to a correction needs to be made. It's supposed to literally go maximum of 4 colors.
I think it just needs to be deleted because it's already on item A, maximum of 4 colors, right?
It's true. It's redundant. We'll take it out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's a specification that about a maximum of 1 driveway. Which to me seem very restrictive and possibly not safe. Like sometimes it's helpful to have an entry and an exit. So does staff have guidance on best practices here?
I think the concern from the subcommittee was just traffic, adding new entrances and exits onto Alpine Road and what that would do for traffic control and safety. I certainly wouldn't want to limit sites to just 1 driveway period, because that could impact site layout. And we'd want to allow for more than 1 driveway if it helped better design the site. But based on conversations with the subcommittee, they determined that the driveway could be attributed to how many units there were. And so that's where we ended up on that recommendation.
Okay, maybe with that. Okay, so I've brought this up before about the fire hazard severity zones. So 1815-070C. Let me find that real quick.
Page 44, red 44.
Thank you. So. 44. Yes. So, one thing it says is that basically in the very high fire severity zone, the Woodside Fire Protection District, sorry. Yeah, maintaining defensible space per the Woodside Fire Protection District. And, they just passed their ordinance that we need to maintain defensible space regardless of the very high fire hazard severity zone. And I mean, all of this, it just seems like all these things apply regardless of this clause. So does staff see any issue with deleting this clause, item C?
No, we had proposed this scaled back language at the previous meeting in our staff report. And there was some discussion on it, but there wasn't any definitive direction from Planning Commission. But staff, Town Attorney Engberg, none of us see a problem with deleting it altogether. So we just need direction.
Okay. On red page 48, there's note number 3. Housing units on 4370 Alpine Road facing that Horse Avenue shall be limited to 1 story. So the word there is facing that Horse Avenue. In our housing element, the word used is fronting that Horse Avenue, which I think has a different meaning. So was that an intentional change?
Unintentional. Yeah, typo. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Page 48.
More question?
I'm done.
You're done. Yep. Good.
Since we go through and you're in this week, now then on a section by section basis, is it better to go through them individually?
Depends how many questions people have. Do you have a lot?
So,
Well, Ronnie already went through his whole list, so I think you go through your
Yeah,
list.
go for it.
Then I'll go.
Please go.
On our red page 12, pertaining to 18.04.112, definition of common open space. There's reference to the open space is accessible to all tenants. Is there a reason why it's tenants rather than residents?
No, I don't think that specificity is necessary. You should,
If you have a kind of a condo or something.
I agree. Okay,
Um,
make a note of that. Thank you.
Under common area, under 1804.11, which I think is also read page 12.
Yep.
This is the coverage area. Why doesn't that cover hardscape? Under the definition, it seems to be excluded. And again, that's sort of the sort of thing that I'm confident that our friends on the ASCC or others may have some insight into. I didn't understand it.
I'm not positive how we got to that. If that was part of discussions with the subcommittee or ASCP at some point. I think it was Carden.
Oh, this is in red, though. It came in now.
New.
I brought up at the last meeting, I brought up the example of a shuffleboard court. And could you count that for a community thing? I felt like Carter felt like, no, people didn't want more concrete. So I thought this was I interpreted this new red comment as being a response to that.
Wait, which item are we talking about? The
Common
coverage
open
area?
space, Ann, or-
Yes.
I think Nicholas shifted gears to coverage area ratio, if I'm not mistaken.
And that's right. I mean, I think that the common open space and is, so I'm on. Yeah, so I've now shifted to 114.
Hardscape is impervious. area.
Well, it's,
Impervious.
It's
is hardscape.
impervious. and, the term coverage area isn't a defined term generally. So we now have the coverage area ratio, which, I know there's also an issue. To Ann's point, I'm now to 112. Open space can be impervious under the definition, but in the common open space, it means a pervious open space. So I'm wondering if there's I'm missing the rationale or the issue that's associated with that. And it may be that, it came out of the subcommittee. Again, I looked at it and I don't understand it. Maybe that it's got the wrong people.
Subcommittee members that are here, do you have recollection of us going over this? I'm trying to remember and I can't recall spending any time on the actual definition as a group. That's how, so the definition is ratio of the total footprints of all buildings on site. So that's what we're trying to cover here. So it says coverage area does not include hardscaped areas.
I believe we were deferring to Carter
I
and
totally
on,
agree with
on that one.
Jen. Yeah, I think so too.
But this makes sense to me because then when you get to the tables, there's things for car that, refer to buildings, then there's separate numbers that refer to impervious surface or landscape. So I think this is just for clarity. Coverage area does not mean pavement out
It
there.
has to do with buildings.
Right. I'm trying to
Understood.
be clear.
But it also includes hardscapes generally, like, for example, decks or fines, paths. And shuffleboard courts.
I don't think the coverage area ratio does. It's buildings.
But it says coverage area does not include hardscaped areas.
Right. It's
So,
trying to
okay,
be.
So then it excludes, so it's just buildings and excludes roads and
Right.
in the common space. Area means pervious areas, so your shuffleboard is lost there.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
It's a subset of the landscape area.
Oh,
Maybe not. It's not written that way on
Right.
purpose.
I understood you could double count your landscape and your common area if the architect so chose, but.
But
didn't
what
have to.
else? What, other than landscape area, what could count as common open space?
A big oak tree with nothing under it.
No, that, you said that was landscape. Previously, we discussed that. So, yeah.
There's a sensitivity there. that I don't understand. I don't know. And beyond that, I think we're kind of in discussion.
Yes.
In density, it looks like density includes roads and infrastructure and things like that in the denominator. There's frequently, when one's calculating density, one subtracts out roads and parking and things like that. But here we are leaving it in.
Yeah, the way it says per gross acre makes me feel like it's
Yeah.
it's everything.
Yeah, it's everything. And that's interesting. It's different. It has implications. Again,
I'm
What?
not completely clear on this one.
so frequently, when one is calculating the density of a site, one nets out things like roads, for example, that are interior to the development. And in this case, we aren't doing that. And is that because we want to see, or I guess the answer is I don't know why we're doing it.
Oh, really? I feel like, so I'm no expert, but I feel like in all the housing element thing, we talk about a site and the state has numbers that we had to hit or not hit that were 20 units per acre. It was always understood to just be the gross acre because, it would be hard to kind of imagine a road that had to be taken out to then name it. I feel like everything in the housing element was understood to be gross, on a gross.
That's possible. That would be not intuitive for me.
I see.
And if,
Mhm.
our planning director and senior planner say, get with it, Nicholas, then that's cool. And if that was the assumption in the housing element, then for consistency purposes, then we should stay with it. It's definitely not always that way. And if it's that way in Portola Valley in our housing element, then we should keep it that way in the zoning. And that's fine if that's what we're doing. Is that what we're doing?
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay. Under red page 16, 1804, 232. In pervious areas, pervious area ratio, where we would exclude things like pervious concrete, which is otherwise called out in this document in a positive way. I recognize that that the definition of pervious and impervious includes, definition of impervious includes fine paths and decks, regardless of how open they might be. As a point, it might be appropriate to consider sustainable practices here, or it's possible that sustainable practices in the definition of perviousness belongs in some other document. Is there a reason why we didn't include things that are truly pervious?
I might ask our consultants to weigh in. I think there might be an existing definition elsewhere in the code that we're not, we're not trying to alter that.
That would make sense,
Mhm.
but you know, it makes sense for consistency and hobgoblins, and that's okay. But I just wanted to make sure I understand why we're doing that.
Okay, so the question being why we don't sort of include a definition of impervious versus pervious.
And the answer that is defined someplace else is a totally fine answer if that's the answer.
Yeah, it's in our code. I can see it. I can look it up and find it.
No, it's fine.
I didn't understand it. So I didn't know there's something called pervious concrete, but are we saying pervious concrete counts as IAR or no?
We're saying that pervious concrete is impervious for the purpose of this,
Why do you interpret it that way?
because it's hardscape.
Pervious, okay. Okay.
So, yeah, it's one of these things where it flies backwards, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me so long as we're just doing that because old habits die hard and this isn't the time or place to do it. And that's subcommittee.
Yep, subcommittee. Rebecca, certainly, but we've got to get you to a microphone so they can record you.
Rebecca, ASUC. Just a quick comment on that impervious area ratio. When we ran the calcs, in our ASUC, we did not exclude portions of the property when we did the calculation. So we just, whatever the number was, 0.28 times the actual acreage of the lot. That's how we came up with the numbers. So there was no exclusion for the building pad, which was different than what the way it's been in the past for some, I don't know if we call it impervious area ratio in the R1 zoning.
I don't think we have that.
Yeah, I don't think this is a completely new definition,
Yeah.
which that extra part that was not us that inserted that thing about excluding building. I don't have the words right in front of me, but we definitely ran the number against the entire parcel size.
No, but in where you have the car plus the IAR plus the LAR add up to 100%. If the car is the
Yes.
building, I mean, the IAR doesn't include the building.
Right. No, yes, that's right. So if you have, say you have 20% one, 30% the other, and 50% the third, you're not doing that. That 50% is of, each of those ratios is of the whole acre. You're not doing a 50% of the portion that doesn't include,
Right.
you're not subtracting first and then doing the
That's not what it
0.5. I know, that's not what that definition says.
No, that's not what it means. I think what you just said is consistent with the definition. Am I misinterpreting the definition?
No, yeah, you're yeah, because the definition suggests that you take
No,
the
I-
1 acre lot, then you subtract what you're using for the building, and then you're doing the 0.5 or whatever of
What-
what's left of that's how I read that.
It
But
depends how you parse that. clause.
yes,
So
yes,
it
where's
says
the
impervious
parentheses?
area
Yeah,
To the size of the site. And then it says excluding areas covered by buildings. I don't think that means you take that out of the site. I just think that means that the area covered by buildings is not part of the impervious.
That's
area.
how I read it too. And then it does fit your 20 plus 30 plus 50. But
right. Well, I wasn't reading it. I didn't read it that way, but again, I can see how you might read it that way, I guess. So I think it needs to be clarified a little bit. 'Cause
Yeah.
I misread it, and
Mhm.
sounds like Nicholas is also kind of reading it differently, so.
Sounds good.
I have a different question, but, but it makes sense. And we could take buildings and include it in the things that are,
You could say impervious does not include buildings, or,
Oh, yeah, just make it 2 sentences.
right.
yeah.
Sentences is
It
good.
did fix it.
So this is for landscape area ratio, correct?
No,
Oh, impervious, rather, impervious
So
area ratio.
18042332.
Okay. Okay, and sorry, please repeat.
Just make it 2 sentences. So
Yeah.
the first sentence just ends at the comma. And then the second sentence would just be IAR excludes areas covered by buildings.
You really don't
Okay.
even need the excluding areas covered by zoning, but anyway, you can put it on the.
Yeah.
Or you
if it's not
just
needed.
include buildings with other hardscaped and paved areas.
We'll fix it.
Okay.
Similarly, landscaped areas, this is in a, I thought it was, it looks like we are excluding, paths and things like that in landscaped areas. So you have the landscaped areas that are not accessible to people. This is a, well, not accessible to people on paths. Any reason why we're doing that?
Wait, no, if it's a dirt path,
Why?
it's fine.
If it's a, right, if it's a dirt path, so long as it's not a compacted dirt path or a dirt path that, or a path that has vines on it. It's just sounds,
I don't understand what your problem is.
I just thought that it was unusual for a landscaped area not to have, not to include paths. As paths are typically part of one's landscaping. At least
Wait, I think paths can be included. You're jumping that paths are compacted.
Yeah.
We have another
I
explanation,
think,
please.
Rebecca, I think in the current code, it defines a width of a path. So if the path becomes 4 feet paved or compacted, then it starts, it's counted as impervious. That's in the current code. So I would say that our intent is just to cleave as close as possible to the current code for all these definitions. That would be my feeling, but.
That makes sense. I think that's why we did that. For
Would it work to
consistency.
say any area that's IAR is not part of the landscape area ratio instead of specifying? Because I think that would resolve.
Yeah, I think that is, I think that's accurate.
So the change would be, this is for IAR, right?
No, LAN.
Oh my God. Okay. LAR, can you please repeat that?
I guess my question, since we're in questions, is that's
Yeah,
We're in
questions.
questions,
If we-
yeah.
seems if we deleted the last sentence and just made it say any areas that are impervious area ratio are not included in
Mm.
landscape area ratio, would that be workable?
Okay. I'm gonna note that. and We'll take a look at it. Thank you.
Mhm.
On table 18-15-050 development standards for multifamily. Footnote 2. Footnote 2. Calls out the north side of the setback for Ladera Community Church affiliated housing site may be reduced to 0 feet with permission of the adjacent property owners.
Right.
Are we delegating our authority to the adjacent property owners?
So it is the same property owner. It's Ladera Church for the church and then the existing church. That's the next door property owner. So it'd be the Ladera vacant parcel and then their church site proper. And then that property line could be reduced to 0. The thinking being it's the same owner developing something that would be complementary to the existing use of the church.
Is it north though?
I believe so.
I've never heard of giving authority to a different property owner or to a different parcel owner authority to take action. That, that seems like a good conditional use modification if we want to make it such, or
Isn't that, isn't it actually, didn't it get written that way in the housing element?
It is in the housing element.
Yeah. Why it's
that
here.
is, I would maybe it's a nicety, but I would appreciate our council opining on whether or not this is a thing.
Again, the intent was that it was the same property owner and therefore that they would give themselves permission to do it. We wouldn't have included such a permissive statement if it was two separate property owners.
Well, it could be sold, right?
It could be, I'm sure it will be sold and turned into an LLC, and you'd end up having.
Right, but then the other property owner gets a say then.
Right.
It seems okay to me if it gets sold.
It's,
You're not sure it makes sense from a legal perspective and
I-
you have a way to
it's-
look at it.
It's not that it doesn't make sense from a legal perspective. It's problematic from a legal perspective. And I just want to understand what the rationale was. And the answer is that presently it's owned by the same entity. And therefore, the thinking was it's not a big deal.
I think, I think what's bothering him is the fact that it is the current owner is the same owner, whereas the way it reads, it sounds like it's a different party. So to solve the problem, you could say the adjacent property owner, which at this time happens to be the Ladera Community Church building. I mean, that's what's, I think, what's.
Or I'd be totally satisfied if we had a zero setback there right now and just leave it like that. But I'm totally uncomfortable assigning land use decision-making for a municipality to a private entity. And that's kind of everything the matter with that. From my perspective, and that may, I understand the issue and we're now in discussion.
Yes, we are.
Yes.
That's what happens. Back to questions.
Under red page 56, affiliated housing, under 18.29.010, we took out the word, we took out the word locally. And I wasn't sure why we did that. Let me get to the page.
I think this is more restrictive. It has to be an existing based institution. I think people were a little worried that Google would buy up some building, something, and then say, okay.
Well, existing doesn't. mean-
Locally,
right now,
local,
right?
this was a comment I made the very first time we went over these rules. That locally based institutions could include anything from San Francisco to San Jose. And the way this was written was specifically for two existing facilities here in the town. So the language in there now makes it clear for the existing based institutions and employers, but it's also open if somebody wants to become an existing base, but it's a little more limited.
So is-
Locally could include anything, like I said, from San Francisco to San Jose.
So is Stanford a locally based, Stanford a Portola Valley based institution?
What was your question? I didn't hear what you
I
said.
think with the modification as it is, we have a problem, for example, with Stanford. Establish incentives for existing town of Portola Valley based institutions. I don't think Stanford's one of those things, and they're an affiliated property. I don't think that the modification, I don't understand how the modification includes entities like Stanford.
Even though they're an existing partner.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because they're an existing partner. It seems like that they should be, but they aren't unless being an existing partner makes them a Portola Valley-based institution. think if you ask Port Stanford if they're a Portola Valley-based institution, they say, no, we're a Stanford-based institution, we're a Palo Alto-based institution.
And does Stanford need the provision of the affiliated housing?
They are an
Or are
affiliate.
they?
They're a
Yeah.
partner, an existing partner. Mhm.
But we just need to look at the
Can I
definition.
ask a related question? I mean, regardless of what this says, can any company become an affiliated housing partner without approval by the council?
No,
That's a really good question.
no.
Answer me.
In any event, it seemed like it was excluding a primary partner by that modification. On red page 57, under 18.29.060C, which is required conditions and development standards. Under C, underneath 2, it provides the planning commission may establish alternate development and design standards as appropriate to each site to assure affordability. That seemed like a whomping big grant of flexibility, basically, that we're establishing unrestrained, undefined, open-ended flexibility. And if we deny it to somebody, would we create an issue where we are not affirmatively furthering their housing? Anyway, it seemed like there may have been something that we were thinking about there, and I wasn't sure what it was. And again, it may be a discussion item, but if there's a specific thought we have, then that would be.
As I recall, it was just to have an additional element of permissiveness. It's understood that some of these sites might be, with existing churches on them and just unique site organization that they might require some flexibility on certain standards. So the intention is to be permissive, but it sounds like there's concern about unrestrained permissiveness.
To say about keep your mind open. Not so.
Not so open.
And,
Uh,
it is a small program with a very small number of sites and existing partners. I'm just offering that up in terms of the scale of
Okay.
risk.
And I've got one more item here, and then I'm done. On red page 62. Under 18.60.030A. And my question was, and is in the last clause, or otherwise allowed by state law. I would think that rather than allowed by state law, it would be required by state law. And again, I wasn't sure I followed the thinking, as it seemed like it would. It would pretty significantly change the way in which we're thinking about our parking. And
Perhaps a town attorney question. It doesn't bother me if we make the alteration, but I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not totally sure what the implication would be.
Yeah, and I'll just say, I think what Commissioner Targ is referring to is that for certain projects, off-street parking requirements can be waived for example, density bonus. And in that context, required does make more sense to me than allowed. This language looks like it's in blue, so I think this has been,
Yes, it has.
this has been before us before. So I guess I do want to just see if Monica or David have any additional thoughts about where the language came from and if required, changing allowed to required would make more sense.
Who did you ask?
That's fine.
What?
To change it to required.
Yeah, okay.
Fine. Okay.
That was it.
I didn't understand what I think that they.
We can change it to required,
I
no
think
problem.
everybody- Which
Yeah.
is kind of discussion, but.
That,
But they agree, I think they agreed with you. Yes, it made
Good.
more sense.
Okay, no, I don't.
I guess the answer was, yes, they agreed with you.
The answer is, that's fine.
What you really could do is put a period there and drop that because you have to do what's required by state law. If you say that it's
We'll figure it out.
required by
We'll
state
figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out.
law. But it is all blue. We're going over a lot of stuff that's blue.
Yeah. And
Okay, I'll just go through in order, even though these aren't from biggest to smallest. Read page 11 on the definitions of building height maximum and building height vertical. There was a clause that was struck out or at the elevation. You know, these definitions apply to all houses in Portola Valley, not just the new multi-family. Can anybody talk why that was crossed out? It allows buildings and houses to be taller, which makes me nervous.
I think, Monica, wasn't this just a typo? I'm trying to remember why we struck that.
Yeah, I can speak to that. So, it's not very clearly defined in the code. The town has, on its planning department website, sort of a clarification, like one pager PDF with some diagrams and definitions of the two ways the town, defines height. Those are also not the clearest and or the easiest to interpret. And so this correction came from Carter Moore, who made the clarification for us and clarified exactly how these terms are interpreted. And so we followed his suggestion.
I
And
think,
okay. Yeah, altered the definition on also the diagram.
okay, I'll want to think about that or review those diagrams because this looks like a taller building allowance to me. Let's see, on page 13 in, this is blue writing, but under 18.04.135, it talks about multi-family dwelling and it talks about single unit groups. What does that mean? Just a bunch of little houses together?
And you
Oh,
read
yeah,
page-
so read page 13.
Yep. got it.
And then, the thing that says dwelling, multifamily,
Yep.
towards the end of that list, it talks about single unit groups. I kind of didn't know, I mean, I knew what a townhouse was and a fourplex, but I just wasn't sure. And is there another word that, or is everybody else super clear and it's just me?
I think we're just trying to allow for different types of multifamily arrangements and in different types of built form. So not necessarily triplexes and fourplexes and townhomes only, but rather you can have multifamily with little single units.
Like little cottages.
that's what I was interpreting it as, was like the cottage chalet approach.
Right,
I see.
right. So that's what we're trying to make sure we're not excluding.
Okay, and so is that the best word or is it, can we call it cottages or that's too
maybe that's a question for Monica and David. Is the terminology, single unit groups, is this like a best practice type of language?
Yeah, I do recall discussing that long ago. You know, sometimes we use the term cottage court or bungalow court. I think we decided to just make it as
You don't want to overdetermine it because, for example, if you say cottage court or bungalow court, then what if someone wants to do an arrangement that doesn't focus on a central courtyard? Is that the key element that you're trying to preserve? So you don't want to overdetermine it, unless you do want to overdetermine it, in which case you would use different language.
like, for example, it might be a drive aisle, a small individual homes arranged around a drive aisle. It's not really a court, but
A simple drafting way to deal with that is just after include, say, comma, for example. That way you've included whatever you haven't already included, if you're not trying to be restrictive. It's just drafting.
Okay.
Okay, we could discuss that.
Good.
And page 14, I just misread this emergency shelter where it said you provide temporary housing with minimal supportive services. The way to read this is it's at least minimal supportive services, right? At first I read it with not too much supportive services. Can't go too high on it. I just want to make sure that's the intent, you know, if it stick at least minimal supportive services in there.
You'd like to add the words at least,
Yeah,
yeah,
or some,
with some.
with some. Either of those words are okay by me. Let's see, page.
What was emergency shelter?
Yeah, let's see, under,
With minimal, oh, I understand. I see where it is. Yeah, I see where it is, yeah.
oh, thanks.
With at least, okay.
Clarifies it.
Let's see, next one is page 18. Oh, this had a porch, reading that, and then towards the end of the porch section, it said it may be either engaged within or attached to the front facade. I didn't really understand engaged within. I guess that just means the building's notched and you call that a porch. That didn't, I never call that a porch. I guess for me, a porch kind of sticks out. So I had a hard time picturing engaged within for a porch. Again, is that just me or
well, yeah, we think sometimes a porch can, you know, if the roof of the structure goes over the porch, it's sort of engaged as opposed to projecting. I think the idea is just to indicate that we include both. Either it counts.
Does that make sense, Anne?
I guess so. I can picture a little, like a screen porch in a way.
With like where the roof projects over, so it's sort of.
Still part of the,
Or the second
House.
floor is over.
Right,
I see.
right.
yeah, okay, I get that. All right. Let's see, page 33.
Good words, I agree.
On page 33, under 18.15.040 under B, and it's red writing, it says is limited to a long-term one-room rental. Why is it one room? Would you not maybe have a little ADU and it has a bathroom and a living room and a bedroom?
Oh, okay.
I think you have to go back to section 1812.040 of the actual code, of the existing code, and there it discusses this idea of being able to rent out a room. But it's not talking about ADUs, that particular subsection. You'd have to read the original, which I don't have in front
Right,
of
I
me.
did go back and read the original ones. Okay, let's just check that. What is that one room word needed or that limitation, is it needed?
Okay.
Okay. I got it.
And page 34, this might be a style thing and maybe we can, then we'll skip it, but let me just bring it up. Under the floor area ratio and the coverage area ratio, the numbers in the first column are exactly the same. It felt redundant. I mean, it's what happens if you hold the building to 1 story, right?
I didn't follow that. In.
The floor area ratio, there's a row for that. And then there's another row for coverage area ratio. And the numbers are exactly the same. So it feels like, well, why'd we have to
But
say
that
this?
doesn't constrain it to 1 story. You could have a smaller coverage area with 2 stories. Like if they're both 0.6, let's say, or
Oh, okay, so it just
0.16.
ends up both. Okay, yep, let's leave that then. Um. Page 39. Oh, this is again words. This is used a few places, but let's just go to the last line on page 39. It says clear height to projection. I mean, I can tell what it means from the pictures. It's like to, what seems like the roof. Is that word clear means something?
Clear height means something specific.
It does. Yeah. Tell me what that means.
Monica, can you explain that terminology?
Well, unobstructed, really. It means it. There's nothing in the way,
Unobstructed.
essentially. Yeah.
I see. What's an example of something somebody might do that's obstructed?
Well, you wouldn't have this on a home, but maybe like hanging signs or maybe fixtures.
I mean, you can have
Or beams for
I see, beams I can see would make it maybe less than 8 feet. Okay. Oh, and I just wondered why on page 41, we took out roof decks. That sounds kind of nice. And this is what's now numbered red 3 at the top of the page.
So as I recall, that came out of discussions that started at the April 17th meeting and then continued with the subcommittee. This was a concern about privacy
Hmm.
and people, just maybe disturbances of being out on a roof deck and overlooking onto other property. So a privacy thing.
I think the other thing that came up was, they were having difficulty to be objective about what kind would be allowable, given things like privacy. And today we handle all that subjectively. So it was kind of like, strike it.
Okay.
And it was related to the idea that a developer could request that by going through the ASCC. So we decided to defer all of those extra exceptions just for expediency in the current.
And I hate to bring up this can of worms, but on page 50, among other places, it talks about the very high fire severity zones and what the rules will be. And Ronnie brought up some other places, but that definition, we're gonna really have that when we get the fire maps, which we've been waiting for a while, right?
Right. So there's multiple sections where we'd have to strike the language for consistency if we get that direction, which I think we've gotten. In discussion, we'll get that direction. from the commission?
I'm
Just-
happy to give direct, I mean, my direction.
Yeah, so
that I will bring up was to strike the whole thing.
Yes, so
Not
all,
Just the very high fire.
Right.
severity.
But everything about fire because
Yes.
it's taken account other places. Okay, good,
Correct,
because
yeah.
I felt like this needs some more definition.
Uh,
Okay.
but we all, it
That'd
also
be a
wasn't,
discussion.
that would be, yes.
Yeah.
But to answer it, it was meant to be consistent with the other section
Yeah, I see.
that then
Okay.
people asked about.
Okay. And let's see. Now let me jump. On page 67, there were, I'm reading kind of in the middle of the page under B. And then number 3, there's about parking lots with sufficient islands to accomplish a well-landscaped appearance and shading while avoiding unpleasant expanses of paving. This all seems so subjective. Is it subjective? And then that brings me, we also needed a review by, I think it was the consultants, to make sure everything was objective enough. This is the one that jumped out at me, but might there be other places that are too subjective?
Mhm.
Oh, and do other people agree? I just felt like unpleasant expanses of paving felt like,
This,
Uh,
where are we? We're under improvement and maintenance.
Page
Um,
67.
page
B3.
67, B as in boy, -3.
It's an area that wasn't changed at all.
Right. So this is applying to.
Oh, I see. Well, oh, since we haven't changed it, maybe I should not be working on it.
I don't think you're wrong. For what it's worth.
But what does this section apply to? Does it apply to the multifamily zones or?
You know, I assumed it did, but okay, maybe I didn't.
I guess it's,
No, it's here because it would apply. So we're only dealing with sections of code that would apply to the new zones.
Oh, and does does HCD require that we go through all our zoning rules? Not just the new ones, but all of them that would apply, and if they've been subjective, we have to get them more objective right now. Or,
Well,
yeah,
so
it's
the
strict.
understanding, but we have to make zoning code amendments that will facilitate the development of the housing sites in these new zones. So if there's anything in the code that we don't have that yet, we're adding it in. That said, if there's there's other sections of the code that were established before January 2020, the Housing Act crisis, we can leave those sections as is. So long as there's no direct conflicts
Mhm, mhm,
between what we're doing here to facilitate the new zoning.
mhm.
So no, we didn't do a comprehensive review of the entire code. Anything that was applicable to facilitating the zoning and, when we had reference into other code sections, we made sure that that didn't conflict.
Mhm.
But I think you're referencing a little bit to some more of like a comprehensive code update.
Okay, so we could, or one discussion point could be, no, we'll leave this till
I think so.
other time.
That's my sense, but I'll raise this with consultants anyways, just to see if we've missed something.
Okay, that's all my questions.
I think the only question that I had was, and I think I know the answer, but I wanted to double check, was we still had a couple of sections in here where we had the diagrams with the daylight planes. And I presume we're waiting for the updated little diagrams from the consultants before we update those.
Right.
Okay. We could quickly. I think the other one that came up that I found along the,
I'd want to understand that. I see diagrams of daylight plans. Are you saying that they're not currently accurate or?
They're not, no, they are the ones that have the, where we miscommunicated the horizontal versus vertical. So we're showing an angle like this as being required, and it's not, it's more like this. Which is why it causes such an issue. So it's
something
what they're reversed. It's one, the 1 and 2 are reversed in the diagrams.
Okay.
Didn't check all the diagrams, did you?
I think they're all identical. They're all consistent.
Okay,
We're all
fair enough.
Incorrect.
So is the wording is also incorrect?
Yes,
So it's 2 vertical to 1 horizontal?
Yep.
I see.
and only from the side setbacks. That's the current definition for the rest of town.
So currently it says property line, but you're saying that should change to side setback?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay.
That was it on my questions. Well, the question is now, I guess the next question is, do people want to break before we go to public input?
That'd be nice.
Okay, let's do a 10-minute for public input. Oh, sorry, 10 minutes, and then we'll get back to public input.
Okay.
On here, and we are ready for public comment on the zoning code. So let's see, do we have anybody in the schoolhouse?
Ronald was able to help me understand why my comments weren't in there, because that was April 3rd, or April 3rd, not April 17th. But that does bring up the question for me, where do those comments get handled by ASCC to be put into what you're seeing as the projected code? So I'm trying to find out where those comments looked at by the ASCC and included in what you're looking at, or they're really not. The second thing is for people like me who don't live with this the way you guys do, it would be really helpful if you could do the code section and then say the page number. The code sections for us are not as easy for us to deal with, but page numbers are really easy to deal with. So whatever you can, that's really helpful to us. The item that I'm interested in, that to find out if it was looked at, was, and you guys all know 4370 is the one that I'm most interested in, was suggesting that if it is, hopefully that you're going to have housing go on that site. And that's what the neighbors want, is housing to go on that site. But it may not be housing, it's mixed use. So if it's mixed use, one of the things we have in the housing is, if it's abutting Nathorst, that it be 1 story. That's in the housing element. But it is not for any mixed use building. So ostensibly, you could have a 3-story mixed use building that fronted Nathorst. And so I'm asking that you put in something that would limit a building at 30 feet off of Nathorst to 1 story. Thank you.
All right, let's see, I'm gonna go online. And first hand up I see is Dave Cardinal. Dave, let's get you on.
Hi there. Thank you. And first and foremost, I don't envy you, any of you, the situation you're in, and especially not our town staff who's been kind of whipsawed. It must be pretty frustrating that 18 months ago, you as a group approved a housing element that would have probably sailed through the state. And now we're 18 months later and we're still trying to get a housing element through the state, through none of your fault. But in any case, second, kudos to Linda Brothers. When she first proposed the 2-color edits, I thought it was kind of like a little excessive, like William Faulkner wanting The Sound and the Fury to be printed in 4 colors. But it was a lifesaver when I went through and read it. So kudos to you. And to NCOPSEL is the first person, I think, in maybe 20 busted meetings from audio to actually put up a little sign that said, oh, here's the deal. Like, it's not you, it's us. So maybe we should get one of those printed up that you could hold up like the television stations used to do. So that was very helpful, because otherwise we're out here going, I don't know, is my computer broken? But onto the important stuff. I think whatever you decide tonight, I'm totally in support of it, because I wouldn't want to have to make the decision. I do think that we're faced with the decision of either pushing through some zoning that isn't, I don't think, actually going to do anything. I hate to say that, but none of the property owners think they can develop under those rules, from what I can tell. Ladera Congregational Church doesn't, Jim White doesn't, and Rich Thies has already kind of indicated that he doesn't. Now, if we had 20 sites and not everybody was okay with it, that'd be fine, because we don't have to build the housing. We just have to make it possible. But we need every one of those people to do something to make our housing element work. Plus, we need, currently Dorothy Ford Park, which is another reach goal. So I think, we are at the risk. I mean, the losing the forest for the trees. The trees are great. The branches are great. The discussion is great. But I'm not convinced anybody's really going to build anything in these zones under the way we're looking at them, until we do something else or more, which is a longer discussion. So, and I think HCD might figure that out as well, because they're not entirely stupid. And, we can blame them, but we've made plenty of mistakes on our way here. So I'll support whatever you do, but I hope we realize that there's a good chance, if we provide our sort of Potemkin housing plan, HCD is going to go, but you haven't done anything in 18 months and nobody's going to build on any of these sites, and that's not going to work very well. Thank you.
Thank you. Did we have anybody else in the schoolhouse who would like to make a comment? Please come up. No, we'll go there next. I'll pick it.
After hearing today, I'm thinking that cement walkways are not pervious. They are impervious. So can somebody explain why they're being counted as pervious? That's my question. I'm against roof decks. We have a very strict noise ordinance in town. And I think it would not only be a privacy issue, but also a noise issue. And you have listed 135 homes in this town that don't have two constrictions, one of those being mine. So if something was to get built next to me, I could hear everything. And that's not something I moved here for. We want to give people affordable housing. We don't need to give them party areas on top of the buildings. The public would like definitions of all the words in the housing element. We asked for the definitions by this meeting, if you're going to pass it this meeting. And 2 weeks ago at ASCC and joint, the Planning Commission and ASCC, we need definitions. This is not something that the public normally reads. And if you could put it online so we can see the document when you're talking, and we used to have somebody here that would bring it right in front of us, and we'd be able to read it with you as you're saying your numbers of the code. So I'd like to see it up on the screen, and then we all look at it together. I don't believe there should be a zero setback if our setbacks are already set for the town. So why would we go to zero? And then I was concerned about Ann's comment. I'd like more information on the max and the vertical and the height of the building is very important. And if we're going to go to single unit groups, I like the cottage court in a central area or a bungalow in a central area. I don't like, rows and rows and rows and then another row. I think who we are is gathering in central areas, and the common areas should be as large as they can. They seem small to me, the common areas where you would have kids playing that should be a good size.
You need to be finishing up, Christie.
Not the smallest space possible. So please look at the common space closer and see if we've really done our job there. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, we're going to go back online. We'll go to Ellen.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay, so I'm calling in regarding red page 48 on the zoning code amendments, and it's regarding the multi-use setbacks. On this 48, on the interior side, it was a red 25 scratched out and then a 15 red. So I'm not quite sure where we're going here, but I think that's going to cause a lot of debating in the future if we leave it at 15, because the housing element specifically says on Nathhorst that the side setback will be 25 feet. So I think that should be specified. I've said this before, specified in these amendments, so there's no debating when it finally comes to be that somebody builds homes there. So, and I don't know why it was changed from 25 to 15, but if we could at least correct the Nathhorst setbacks on the zoning code amendments, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
In the footnote, yeah. Let's go to Jim White online.
Thank you. Couple just very quick comments. One, I realize this is a volunteer group with a few outside staff and consultants. And I think the challenge is a very complex set of topics that you're dealing with. And I think the real question is, what's the objective, what you're trying to accomplish? The history is most of what you call the developers are people that predate the town. That's the Priory, Sequoias, Stanford, Rosati's, for just a short list of folks that were 10 to 100 years before Portola Valley was incorporated. We're trying to impose a bunch of standards on folks that pre-existed the town and have a long mission-driven, I think, generally copacetic approach to what we're trying to do as a town. And so you, as the Planning Commission, I think, are charged with a decision to make that I don't think you've been given the proper information. There's 4 properties that are trying to be rezoned that are 15%, 38 units of the 250 units that are in the RENA 6 cycle. And every one of those property owners are telling you what you're doing does not produce the results that you want in the inventory. It's all a kitchen sink of trying to be protective versus productive. And I think the question you have to ask yourself is, what's your goal? Is your goal to prohibit production or to encourage production? And the production we're talking about is trivial in the scope of the totality of Portola Valley. But it is relevant in what HCD is going to look at what this town does. My comments, as you know, have seen multiple times, is I think you're producing a set of standards that create a disincentive, not an incentive to create production. I think you're going to end up with the few discretionary units that don't produce instead of produce. And when you look back on this in 12 or 24 or 36 months, when HCD reviews us, I think this is going to be a pivotal moment of what you decide to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see one more hand up on line 7562.
Great, thank you very much. Caroline Zutongan. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, so I really appreciate this planning commission to go into the details. BPTS, which is the Bike Pedestrian Traffic Safety Committee, did provide their input, and we're very concerned about the on-street parking. So anything you can do to limit on-street parking, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Tim Clark.
Yes, this is Tim Clark from Ladera Church.
Yep.
First, I want to point out that the current landowners of the two parcels at Ladera Church have zero interest in a 0-foot setback between the two properties. This is to direct Commissioner Targ's comments earlier about the setback between those two parcels. I'd also say, secondly, would echo what Jim said just now. The town needs to decide if it's trying to encourage or discouraging housing, and specifically affordable housing. The exercise you're in by making it more complex has a tendency to discourage. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do not see any more hands online. So I will close public comment. Discussion time. Or was there anything out of those that you wanted to ask staff to try to answer? Discussion time then. Well, well, first of all, where do you think we are in terms of being close to submitting something to the town council, or probably a long way away?
I feel like we're closing in on it. In fact, I'd like to discuss, can we get to the point where we pass it on to the town council and say, with the proviso that the consultants redo the site numbers with the proper daylight plane, and if those pass, then it goes on to the town council. Obviously, if it doesn't, it has to cycle back somewhere. We send it with an if statement.
Tonight versus next week.
I could, but we would each need to go, there's some topics we need to discuss. So we'd have to go through and say, change this, you know, make a list of 12 things. And then if the site numbers pass the consultants, it goes to town council. Or I'd like us to aim there.
I'm in the same place. I think we could pass the resolution tonight with our changes, and I would do that with or without the daylight plane.
I'd be inclined to have, to make as much progress as we can this evening, and to have some composition at the ASCC, have their hands on it. And get it back to us and then move forward on it. I think we're very close.
Having spent the better part of, I don't know, 2 or 3 days going through the details of this, and maybe I started from a lower knowledge level than some of you, but still, it's complicated. And a large number of the comments are almost, I don't mean to belittle the comments, but it's the way things get worded. It's so hard to just get the right words down in the right place. They get taken out of context, and you have to remember to go back and put them into context, which is a long way of saying, even some of the questions and so forth that came up tonight, I would feel like I hadn't done my responsibility, having now served on this committee with Carter and Rebecca and Don, if I let this thing go now, because the difficulty of getting all those words straightened out is difficult. I think the daylight plane is really important, and I really want to see how that comes out. I mean, I think I personally am not ready to get rid of it. I would love to get rid of it. I would love to have that time back into my life. And so I guess it's a question of how much I or the subcommittee feels an obligation to take another look at all of these pieces that we got started and got into motion. I think that's, I mean, if the commission wants to pass it on, I'm not going to stop it, but I'm really concerned that there's a lot of drips between the cups of the lip that's getting this off to the council. And whether we need to have a whole planning commission meeting to do that, or whether those of us who want to could be involved with it, I don't quite know, but I feel like there's another step that's necessary.
And can I just be clear? I was not suggesting get rid of the daylight plane. I'm suggesting the correction. I think everybody, what they did was you've got the side wall, and they did the calculation. If you go up 1 over 2 and draw a line, buildings can't project. But now what they're going to do is up 2 over 1, so you can make it much steeper. The building has to be under this. I say keep that, and they're going to check that the site numbers can work out in it. Yep, as opposed to scratching the daylight plane. Okay.
So not surprisingly, when you saw the agenda for the night, I'm feeling like that we need to have another round of the subcommittee on this, just to make sure we get in everybody's comments. We have been rushing our way through this, and pretty clear from some of the questions. Yeah, we missed a few things. I feel like we have a joint responsibility with the ASCC on this. So I do believe that having them weigh in on the areas that they are much more expert on than we are is kind of important. I also really want to be able to, when I talked about the build out, the potential build outs on the sites, can we really say that we can at least throw up, a diagram of, yeah, this is how it would plan out. I think that's kind of really important to be able to sell it to HCD in terms of what's there. A lot of the other comments that we received along the way relate to concern over the overall housing element and whether or not that's on track. That's really out of scope of what we're trying to do here. It may well come back. I'm not sure where I'd want to, if you asked me to bet on that, I don't know which side I'd come down on. But I think we're trying to get something through. So, but I'm not comfortable doing it tonight. But I do want to do it fast. So the question is, so I guess we've got kind of 3 that are in that boat, if I'm reading that correctly. How do we want to move forward? Before we jump into, detailed items in there, what are people comfortable with in terms of moving forward, in terms of timing and how to get your thoughts in here appropriately?
If I may ask a question, I guess of Adrian or maybe of the council. You always notice our meetings on a Friday. Is that actually, what's the time period that you need to notice a meeting? 4 days, 5 days, 24 hours? And the second part of my question is how specific do you have to be? So for example, if we would decide now to meet again, I'm not advocating this, folks, so don't argue with me, but if we decide now to meet again next Wednesday, typically you would get the agenda and the package out on Friday. I don't believe the modeling and everything is going to be ready in time to do that, but could you announce a meeting, announce the topic, announce without necessarily having every single one of the details in that announcement? Then that would give the subcommittee members a little bit more time to get some of those pieces together. So I hear you, John. Be nice to get this over with, but that seems like a good meeting window. I haven't pulled up my calendar if we went 2 weeks and how far we would be in terms of consistency with the town council schedule. So how much do you have to put into your announcement on Friday if we meet next Wednesday, which was your original proposal when you started the meeting?
Well, so far, we've actually been continuing the meeting. So I think you're talking about when do we have to get the packet out versus legal notice of the meeting. So the legal notice of the meeting, we don't have to worry about because it's a continuation
Okay.
this whole time of the same meeting. So the original notice stands, is my understanding, Catherine.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a notice of a public hearing is what was newspaper noticed and noticed around the town. And that is the legal notice that's required for the planning commission consideration of zoning. And yeah, you have dutifully continued that public hearing several times till tonight. And assuming you don't take a vote and make the recommendation on the resolution this evening, or make the adopt the resolution this evening, you would then be you would need to continue the public hearing again to a date certain. So you would do that motion tonight, and then staff would work on the packet. And I will say, you know, you are currently meeting during a planning commission regular meeting. Your next meeting is going to be a special meeting. Special meetings technically only require 24 hours notice. However, our practice is to provide, you know, you all and the community with as much notice as possible. Plus, we don't like to put out packets on the weekend anyway. So, although unfortunately Adrian has been doing that because she's been working around the clock. But I anticipate that we would, you know, aim to get that packet out on Friday. And Adrian, please correct me if I'm wrong, because you do the laboring or on the packets.
Yeah, but Linda sort of raised a question for me. Is there a way to do a partial packet? To what extent can you release more packet information, you know, after you posted the original packet? That I don't know the answer to.
Yeah, and yes, you may, as long as that's, you know, the agenda, the key thing is that you notice the agenda topic, which we will be doing, and you can supplement the packet, you know, as more information becomes available. So say you continue the public hearing to next week from today, Wednesday, you put out the packet on Friday, but then more information comes available by weekend work from the AFCC subcommittee, for example. You could supplement the packet with that, you know, on Monday or Tuesday.
So to follow up to that. So what I'm thinking is we need another rev of, you know, the entire thing. I don't know if we have a third color or but whatever. Another rev of this, and I don't know if that's really possible to get ready for Friday afternoon. Is kind of what I'm just struggling with. So.
But did I
Why can't we
hear?
do it tonight?
Yeah, oh, I really like that, yeah.
Like, why? I
Well, we
mean, I
can
don't
do it.
understand we can't do it by Friday. I think we could do it
Do you
tonight.
think we could do it tonight?
Yeah.
I'm willing to go for that. Sorry, I was already assuming that we were gonna keep going through this to try to put in as much as we can. So
Right, and so
that's
then we'll
good.
be
And we'll
essentially
I'm not sure
done.
where that's certainly substantive enough, I guess, to put out on Friday. All right.
Yeah, but that should
I
just
think
go
that
to
works. Yeah,
staff.
yeah,
I
sorry,
think
you're
we
right.
don't-
Yep, yeah.
It even needs to go to the subcommittee.
Okay. that works for me.
Gonna draft by committee, but if we want to draft by committee of the whole, we can do that.
I'm good with that. Nicholas, are you good with that?
I think we're all pretty close right
Okay.
now. And I think that,
Yeah.
the question is whether there's enough energy to push us all the way through, but I think.
Okay, well, let's take a shot at it then. So I guess we're gonna work our way through it. We had a number of items that we brought up, right? We're gonna try to hash out what the answer to that would be, or perhaps it's what needs to be done by the subcommittee. That's okay too. Yes?
Yeah.
And Adrian, is that something you can keep track of the notes as we go?
Yeah, I'm just making sure our consultants are on the ball.
Oh, okay.
Because I kind of have to go back and forth with
Right.
you guys, so sometimes I miss
I thought
things.
they were gonna be ready relatively quickly, but yeah.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I think we're gonna, I just want to make sure we capture everything precisely since we're
Perfect.
making decisions.
Okay.
Can I ask you, I'm always amazed at your note taking. And I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if you have the notes or the comments that we have broken out by little section. No. Yeah. Fair enough.
I think I have pencil notes on various sections.
So you're proposing we go through page by page?
Page by
You just go on to page by
Rather than,
If you can.
member by member, we'll go back and forth, member by member. as we go through page by page. Makes
Yeah,
sense,
yeah,
huh?
yeah, yes. We'll do page by page. So,
I
it-
think
so,
that we're kind of that close.
yeah,
to-
okay.
Yeah, that works.
And if we can bring it up, that's great.
We can solve them all right now without
Yeah.
Carter here.
You know, there's, it's gonna go back to some constellation. And I assume there'll be some amount of sanding. That will take place.
But only fine sanding, not coarse.
Yeah, I'm
99.
thinking like 100.
Okay, fine.
So, what was your word in last meeting?
Draconian?
Draconian.
That will never be
You
used
objected to
again.
that, and then you went, as soon as the daylight plane you came up, and it was like, cut it.
That's new.
All right, are we ready to start working our way through it?
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we're on red page 9 and the first page of definitions. And it seems the first thing that came up was, that I have is the vertical height. And Ann, you were wondering why it was a strikeout. And
So which red page?
Page 11.
page
Page
11.
11, got it.
Sorry, and it's 1804.078. And there was a question there that Ann, you had about why it was struck out. And Monica gave us some sort of feeling for that as a Carter interpretation. Is that something we need to deal with?
Wow, I am definitely wishing we could have somebody, I mean, Carter's a good guy. I'm not trying to impugn his motives, but he does have clients that, you know, could benefit from a taller, shorter building.
It's actually correcting it to what is existing in our code.
I see, but this was our code.
Our code is the one without the red, this is now corrected to what matches our code.
So the blue is what the consultant put out for us. And then the
I see,
committee went to the red.
That red, I
Now
see.
matches our existing code as written.
Okay, fine, then it's all good.
Then we're probably okay.
But the red part was, used to be blue, but then it was struck out by the subcommittee.
Because the people who wrote the blue did not write the blue consistent with our existing code. The blue is the changes that we got from the consultant the very first time we got the stack.
Right.
The red was when we went through it again. And red now makes this consistent with the rest of the
Okay,
code. Not random.
okay, and then red page 12, the next page. Under under common open space, 1804.112. There was discussion about the rationale for pervious and how it compared to the car ratio for hardscape areas. There was some suggestion we might need some more definition there. Did the explanations that would come in, that came in about what those really were, solve it, or do we still need more definition?
So we're on 112, please.
112 and 114, because we kind of related them back and forth in my notes.
So on 112, I would propose to strike the word tenants and replace it with residents.
Okay,
I agree.
Agree.
Yeah. I have a problem with the way in which we're treating things that are pervious and might like shuffleboard as well. Pervious concrete is concrete that doesn't have a lot of sand in it, so it has more open cells in it and allows water to penetrate. It's a very typical kind of low impact form of landscaping and is it, but I don't think that we need to deal with it yet. So I would, it should be dealt with, but there are many things that should be dealt with and those will get dealt with in our to be done.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is if you want to exclude things like parking lots, how do you write it to exclude them? But if you're saying we don't need to deal with them now,
Are you talking about 114 or 112?
112.
Okay. Yeah, 112 is.
Yeah, I brought up
It's pretty
the
clear.
shuffleboard thing, but I'm not really advocating shuffleboard. You know, if it was pickleball, that'd be something else, but I was fine with changing this to pervious, you know, that is a good, if the ASCC like that, that's okay by me.
I would say that it wasn't the intent of the ASCC to suggest that pervious concrete was included in the open space. It was supposed to be natural, so pervious was not including hardscape.
so I heard future definition on that list of things we've discovered that we don't like, but
Well, we
aren't
all
critical.
agree
I
tenants should
think
be
that
replaced.
Oh,
with
tenants, sorry,
residents.
yeah.
Yeah, tenants, but
Yeah.
I think the rest of it's in the weeds.
Okay. Okay, let's go to 114. I thought those, seems like there was some discussion in 114.
I thought we came up that, no, this is
That
fine.
was okay.
I thought that too.
There's a problem with that we don't have a definition of coverage area, but we have a coverage area ratio, which I would suggest that we flag that and have that be handled by a subcommittee rather than looking at it now. And then they decide that we don't need to deal with it, but it's
Yep, sounds good.
it's
Understood.
not good drafted.
Okay. We had a lot of discussion on 1804.115 density and
Yeah.
what we meant by that.
A lot of discussion. I think that the only thing we need to do is change up to down. It seems like that's the requirement that we round down.
So you would delete the word up and have it shall be rounded to the nearest whole number?
Down, change up to down, rounded down to
You would
the nearest.
actually round it down.
So even 2.9 will
That-
come out to
that's what-
2.
That's what was stated. That's what Monica said is required.
If I can clarify, I think that sentence should be just struck out. That second sentence, just delete it.
Well, then
I
what is
think-
the rounding? Like, what is 2.6 round to?
Would be the rounding.
No, you do need rounding because the standards are specified, numbers for 2 dwelling units per acre, 3 dwelling units per acre, 4, so you have to determine what it is.
Monica, if you struck that sentence, how would you deal with Ronnie's question? Just to correlate density to the housing element numbers.
How I would deal with that is Um, in the standards, which is to say, if you were to scroll ahead to like red page 34, how I would deal with that. Because there's sort of, I mean, there's the issue of how do you define density, right? I mean, typically just it's to a 10th. I mean, that's just how it's generally done, right? But there's the issue of how do we implement the intent of the subcommittee here. So what I would suggest is to say 2. So if you see the line that says floor area ratio, you can say 2, and then you could say 2.1 to 3, and then 3.1 to 4. So with the beginning of each of those lines.
Okay, yeah, I see that would work.
That would
Well,
work. That work?
we'll have to pick those numbers. Do we want to pick those numbers now or?
Doing it, we
We're
can
gonna
do it now or when we get to that section.
Okay,
But
so
if we're gonna do it in order, should we just do the definition now and do that?
that was my question.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's, okay,
So we agree, so
go back to
we agree to
page
take
12.
out that second sentence in the definition of density.
Yeah.
as long as we
Yes.
Fix it in the chart.
Fix
Okay,
it in the
cool.
chart, okay?
Moving right along.
Nicholas, you had some other comments.
The air ratio, I'm fine.
Okay. There was gross area too, discussion.
Where was that word, gross area?
Okay, I think
I didn't have any
you
notes
decided it
on
was
the
okay
floor to
because of
area
the,
ratio.
let's start with that one.
Yeah, that's right. It's for consistency.
What are you guys finding? Is there,
The gross area, we moved past that.
we move past? We're good with that? Okay, you're happy with it? Okay, good. I'm
You
okay
know,
with it.
by 2 or 3 in the morning, you do these things. go
Okay.
away.
Okay. Page, yeah, I know. I'm working on that. Okay, page 13, 1804.135. We had the discussion about single unit groups.
I brought that up. I'm fine leaving it as it is.
Yeah, somebody had a suggestion about, for example, or something like that, or everybody's okay with what's there?
If they group,
Single unit groups.
yeah, I Googled single unit group and I really didn't find any definition of it or frankly much of a reference of it. I found differences between single unit properties and multi-unit properties is a distinction we saw. In single unit properties looking like townhomes, for example. I think if we have something in particular in mind, that's called a single unit group, we ought to use that definition. I'm not familiar with it. And I don't think it's common,
13.
but, or else we ought to use examples.
So somebody had made the suggestion, for example, cottage courts.
How can it just be cottages? Because as somebody pointed out, a court kind of
Oh,
implies
yeah,
a
yeah.
orientation
Just
of
for example, cottages.
cottages. What's wrong with that?
Clusters,
Legally, it
Cluster.
says that it
cottage
includes-
clusters.
I like that.
Legally, it says it includes these things, but what you read into that is including but not limited to. So,
I would-
Well, Rebecca, what was your suggestion there?
Cottage clusters.
Cottage cluster?
I like that word.
That's fine. That's good. That's better.
Okay, cottage clusters it is.
So single unit groups, for example, cottage clusters.
Cottage cluster.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay. We go to page 14. We're into 1804.153, emergency shelters, and there was a request to do something,
But-
at least minimal support or something?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have the words at least between with and minimal support on that first line.
Move forward to page 16. Okay. And on page 6, oh, what's going on there? Oh, that's you.
That's
Sorry, I
me.
thought I did something like, what
Okay.
have I done? Yeah, page 16, 1804.232, impervious area ratio. Ronnie, you were talking about maybe relooking at the definition. We got into the pervious and impervious discussion. There was,
Making
Well-
2 sentences is what we were gonna do.
yeah.
That's on lands. The next one.
Well, I actually had also, so I had heard somebody propose that we, the first sentence be impervious area ratio means the ratio
Oh, sorry. You're right. So,
from
yeah.
impervious
Yeah.
area to
So
the size of
change-
the site,
change the
period.
Period.
comma to Period, yeah.
And then IAR excludes the areas covered by buildings.
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. There was a discussion about potentially sustainable practices. And should this be covered?
Same place as the other discussion of sustainable practices.
Which is
Will be sustainable tomorrow, but not today.
not today. Okay. Later.
Sorry, just to get back to IAR.
Oh, yes.
So make into 2 sentences, the first
Ends at site
ends at
the size, to the size
oh,
of the
site.
site. Period.
Okay,
Yeah.
where it currently is. you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, but a
Yes.
period instead of a comma.
Got it, got it.
Right. And then second sentence, is IAR excludes the areas covered by buildings.
Okay,
So that dependent clause just becomes a new sentence.
okay, thank you.
That's the only thing I learned in English is the dependent clause.
Okay, we had discussion on the next one, 1804.235 landscape area ratio. Discussions about excluding paths. Does landscape really include paths? Seems odd. Rebecca points back to the current code. Those are
So,
what were people?
Well,
thinking?
here I think I suggested to change the last sentence. To simply say landscape area excludes IAR.
So a little, like a brackets at the end after, instead of the period, you go to bracket.
No,
IA,
delete sentence 3
delete sentence 3.
and
Okay.
change it to landscape area excludes IAR.
I like that because then it harks back to the definitions of path as defined in the codes other places.
Totally agree. You know, make it easy to go and change it when you go and change the definition of IAR.
Okay.
Do we want landscape area excludes IAR or just impervious area?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't include IAR, which is a ratio. It
okay,
includes
yes,
impervious area,
impervious, yeah,
excludes
yeah.
impervious area.
And can I just add that I think we're missing the maximum, there's a definition missing in here, maximum gross floor area ratio. It's-
No, you can't add that.
I didn't understand the comment.
It sounds like new business. Why do we need that? We don't have a definition of maximum, what did you call it?
It's in the table as a new
The term
term.
in the table that's not defined.
What term are you saying?
Maximum gross floor area.
What's that gross we were looking for?
I don't see that in the document.
Mhm.
Maximum gross
Yeah,
floor
it
area, page
is
34, page
Max gross
34.
34.
Okay. What,
So you're just trying to define it?
what, does it have to be defined? I mean, it's.
Yeah, why
seems-
define it? Seems pretty self-evident.
Just get it.
I say we don't add.
All
it.
right. We're gonna skip it.
We go back to where we were, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman.
Okay, we go back to where we are.
So
The-
can I ask why, how would you, if you were going to define it, would you define it in a way that would reduce it or that would, that is, do we really mean the max gross floor area. We have a FAR, and this is FAR plus. And this is FAR plus presumably basements and garages and utility rooms and
It actually just includes the floors. Doesn't include basement. It would just be the floors. So if it's a two-story building, it would include the floor area of those two floors.
and so it doesn't include, it wouldn't include garages, even if it's included within the unit. within the-
It.
Why
if-
is the word
if-
gross in there? Why isn't it just floor area?
If it would include garages, if the definition if you kept that definition of garage being part of it.
I agree. I never wanted growth in there.
So what is a that's a good question. So it's a reason why we are gross as opposed to floor area.
That's a question you're gonna have to ask Carter, I'm afraid. Because he
Uh,
coined that, yeah.
I think that's just something that I would want to send back and have an opinion. I can't and I won't go into Carter's head. That's wonderful, guys.
Okay, let me put it down as need something we need to check on.
Well, and if we keep gross, I think it does need to be defined because in this discussion, I am now confused about what it
The
means.
subcommittee might be able to handle that.
Yeah, I
one.
think so. That was my guess. And it's a question of two, is it clarity or are we actually trying to limit something else? It's sort of my first question on that, so. And I'm okay with either, as long as we're clear about it. That's what we have to do. Let's see, that one we solved. Solve. Oh. So, sorry, on page 21, at one point there was a question on, I think it came from Anne, about whether or not there were impacts on R1 if we were redefining a story. And I'm thinking that goes into the future discussion, but I wanted, we didn't talk about it, so I thought I'd better bring it back up.
Was it story or height that she was?
It was if we change the definition, does it go back and affect R1? Regardless of, I don't know if it's height or slow or whatever.
Are we changing the definition? I mean, is there something about it that we are?
Well,
conscious of
Rebecca, what do you
changing?
think? I mean, my impression was somehow that was a new definition of story.
Right. It is new. They're adding the basement. If it's a certain, certain height that's visible, that's open to the air, if you will, it becomes a story. And then my understanding is R1s are limited to 2 stories. R1 residential, all the combining districts are limited to 2 stories, correct? So all of a sudden, if you have this basement that is considered basement, but by our normal definition, this new definition now considers it a basement if it happens to have a section that's a little, so I don't know.
Because right now we do count basements if they're exposed enough, right? We have to just know what is different about this 4 feet definition of a basement, of a story for a basement.
Were we doing this to just be more precise, or did we actually have something we were trying to accomplish?
I think we just wanted the consultants just to confirm that it's not going to contradict with
The consultants
existing.
wrote this definition.
Right.
But
This
I went
is
over
in
this
March 20.
definition with Carter and I had all these very same questions and ended up with the same language here. But I didn't specifically ask him about the impact on R1.
So that's something that's a to-do. We have to ask about that. Okay.
Well, can we ask right now, staff and consultants, are we changing the definition? No, I'm not asking Carter, I'm asking.
Yeah.
Monica, can you weigh in, please?
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind adding the term first story in the definitions was that we're introducing a standard later on for limiting buildings to 3 stories. And that, as far as we could tell, was new to the code. The code didn't limit buildings to a certain number of stories, rather feet. The typical linear code is like, well, a building is limited to 28 feet either. So because of that, we thought, oh, we should add a definition for story so that you know how to count 3 stories.
So I didn't understand, like, does that change what is allowed on R1 or not?
They didn't address that. They just said why she needed it.
Okay, well, can I ask that question? Does that change what's allowed on R1?
So, as I understand it, buildings in R1 are limited by feet. 28. I don't know offhand, but they're limited by feet, and so this doesn't change the way you measure building height.
So R1 is
And it doesn't
limited.
impact like floor area ratio or something,
There's no floor area ratio for single family.
or AMFM.
No.
Okay, so it sounds like we're fine. There's no impact.
I think we're fine. Okay, all right, that's fine. Good. Good, okay. Making progress. Page 33, we were on 18-15-040. And we got into the one-room rental discussion. Did we mean one room or?
I re-reviewed the original and the original is not one room, it's one paying tenant.
And did we just accidentally change it? Or was this meant to mirror what we originally said?
I don't think we meant to change it, but I think somehow that was just, the intent was that this was not, someone in a multifamily would not be able to rent out multiple rooms to multiple people. So that's why we just said one room. We didn't really think about the idea that maybe it's a suite of several rooms within an apartment. So
we should use consistent wording.
yeah, one paying tenant, I think.
That's more clear.
And we just substitute one paying tenant for one room? Or just,
It's limited to long-term minimum 30 rental by one tenant.
What are we changing? I mean, that's our,
We're
if
at
that's already,
18,
no,
15,
my question
040.
is if 18-12-040.c already says this, what are we?
Why is it
changing
here?
about that? I guess the 30 days is not in there. Yeah.
Right, the 30-day was not in there.
So can we just say the 30-day part?
Yeah, but 30 days.
Yes,
what?
scratch one
Or
room
the
rental.
subject, everything about subsection
The
C.
spread one room, you say 30-day rental, limited to long-term, parens 30-day rental.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Okay, scratch one room. That helped the Supreme Court when they have to interpret this.
So I want to just flag an item here, and I apologize for not calling it out earlier.
I'm sorry, Nicholas, you got something else?
Oh, Deb, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
okay, that's fine.
And it's page 26.
It's 6, we gotta go
And
backwards.
this is, yeah, sorry to bring this back. This is 18.10.010.
Yeah,
And, we can decide whether it's in the weeds or not. But under subsection F, provide standards that preserve the rural character of Portola Valley and minimizes wildfire danger.
yeah.
I would propose that we do something about wildfire danger that set and replace it with promotes public health, safety, and welfare. Because minimizing wildfire doesn't actually, it's not
Yes, that sounds good. Say it again so that they can write it down.
Promotes public safety, health, welfare. And it's the same kind of, it pops up in a couple of other locations, but minimizes wildfire dangers.
Mhm.
So that preserves the rural character of Portola Valley and promotes.
Public
Okay.
safety. And same thing's also true on page 32. But 32, 18.15.010. Same deal.
Which subsection? Yep. Okay, where are we, Mr. Chairman?
I think,
Look backwards.
yeah, we did go backwards.
I did.
Okay, so we're on page 32 and we're trying to say the same wording that we just did on page 26 and somehow incorporate it in page 32.
And 18.15.010.
Okay, so help me figure out where does that,
It's the intention, so it should be the same.
I think he's referring to that first sentence, aren't you, Nicholas? Or not?
That
Are
would
you
make
not?
sense. Hold on. Rural family to accommodate single family. You know, this is all fresh line. This is all it would belong here.
oh,
I have to say, I like
I like
this wording where it says incorporate fire resilient design. That means something to me. The,
Yeah.
taken to promote public safety, those other words are a little
Vague.
fuzzy for
Yeah.
me.
I like this one.
Yep. It's fine.
you like it the way it is? We're not trying to add anything else.
I'm fine with the way it is.
Okay, good. No change.
34.
I think page 32, the planning commission should be capitalized. That's little.
The whole
Yeah,
capitalization issue is a
yeah,
huge
yeah,
one. We have
yeah.
words defined here that are not set forth with initial caps, and it drives the lawyer crazy, but I agree with you. Planning commission should be capped, initial caps. That's an easy computer searching of things.
Well, the issue with that one is that elsewhere in the code, it's not capitalized, and so we were just trying to stay consistent, but I agree with you, it's quite annoying.
So we had it on that future list as
Okay.
we need to go back and clean all that up.
Okay, fine.
Let's see. Oh, well, we've solved page 33. I get into page 34. Got a lot of notes on this one.
You need to add the density related definition for Lonnie's comment. The rounding thing.
Yeah. Can I suggest where it says 2, 3, and 4, make it 2 to 2.5, 2.5 to 3.5?
Say it loud so they can hear, because Monica's got to decide.
So where it says 2, 3, and 4, we could make it 2 to 2.5, 2.5 to 3.5, and 3.5 to 4. And actually, I mean, I don't think it's a question for Monica. I think it's up to us.
So 2 to 2.5,
Right?
What would, do that
2
again?
to 2.5.
Yeah.
2.5 to 3.5, 3.5 to 4. That's one way to go.
Can I'm a mathematician, like if you really had something 3.5, you could argue you go in either category. I mean,
You would do like 3.4 and then you would do 2.2 to 3.4 and then 3.5 to 4. Is that how you would do it?
Yeah, maybe.
That doesn't work because then you're gonna have something that's 3.45.
Yeah.
So mathematically, you could like have either a parenthesis or
I don't think.
What do you think?
are those the right ranges that we want? The 2.5 and 3.5? Yes.
You look at me?
Yeah.
I think we can go with what Ryan just suggested. And is that replicates below too?
That replicates in a lot of places, yeah.
Okay,
It's in this table, it's probably in the mixed use table.
okay.
Well, actually,
No, I meant, does it replicate down the car too?
in this table, it appears 4 times, I think. It's
So
in
everywhere, yeah, okay.
bar, car, lar, and IR. Um, Yeah, it's just, I mean, those dividing points are up to us, if it's 2 to 2.5 or 2 to 2.9, whatever we want to do.
Right. And what about Ann's comment? Are we okay with it being a little ambivalent? Yes. Okay. All right.
I know this maximum 4,574 is to try to capture a project that was already in the works, but I really dislike this. Looking like we just matched something. Can we make that 4,600?
4,600. 4,600.
Yeah, you good with that, ASCC? Yeah.
Yes.
So we skip past,
Where do we skip past?
unit size including garage space. I would propose to strike including garage space.
Okay, help me again, get me right there.
What?
Where was that?
In the chart,
In the chart?
It's right, it's the
Left-hand
row
column.
above 4574, which is what we were just talking about.
The line above.
Do you want to decrease the maximum then?
No.
Including garage space.
Oh, right, got it. Okay, sorry. And so,
why? Just because it's redundant?
Well, one aspect is there's this ambiguity or maybe the handling of the shared garage. Also, by removing the include garage space, we allow for larger units, which I'm okay with. And it's also consistent with the definition of FAR.
Rebecca, any thoughts
I
on
don't
that?
think I have a problem with that, but I would want the ASCC to take a look at that, and if it needs to be modeled, it should be modeled.
Yeah, I agree.
What does that mean, that means waiting for an ASCC meeting?
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna pass this on this evening.
No, but there's no ASCC meeting
Or
between.
the
Subcommittee?
The subcommittee.
The ad hoc,
Yeah.
or either wait for, because I think that there is a conversation that we had about whether this goes to the ASCC or whether it goes back to the subcommittee for Sandra. And I think that that's, at least in my mind, that hasn't been a resolved issue. I think it could be, it will be a resolved issue.
Right.
Just, we haven't had that conversation.
And I think the way I just heard people is unless there's a good reason that it doesn't work, we remove it. It's kind of what people were thinking made sense.
I think the decision needs to be made at your level on the maximum floor area. If you're okay with going to, instead of 2,500, going up to 3,000, for example, if someone puts a 500 square foot garage, that's the decision you would need to make.
That's
So-
my proposal.
So otherwise, I think the subcommittee can at least,
I mean, to be
work it
clear,
out.
the floor area ratio is still, sorry, so floor area ratio doesn't include garage.
No.
But I guess just goes to impervious.
I think in the context of a floor area ratio for single family unit, it would, does it include a garage space?
No, I asked that question.
Not comfortable with that change until I really understand it better.
Because I think we
So-
modeled it with the floor area, including everything that's in there
Yeah.
with garages, et cetera.
So
Well, but I mean, this is, I don't know what the question about modeling is. I mean, this is removing a constraint, so there's no, it's not gonna like prohibit something that would have been allowed before. So, I mean, it's up to us. We don't have to do that.
Bigger units, conceivably reduced density.
You don't have reduced density.
Not, you're right, not necessarily, but potentially.
Consider that the
If,
situation like MF 23, they're not going to have garages at all, right?
I don't know if they are or not. So my preference is to strike including garage space. If other people aren't in favor of that, I would say not including shared garage, shared garages.
So you'd say including garage space, but not shared garage space?
I guess that would be my plan B.
Your plan B. That'd be better with your plan B than your plan A.
I would as well.
Okay.
All right, how about we then just decide to go with not
Including
shared?
Garage space that's not shared.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that.
Wait, let me just think about these incentives. If a builder or a project has, this unit has 2 spaces, this one has 2 spaces, and then there's 2 visitor spaces that they share. They don't count that, okay.
None of it counts under what was,
Yeah.
Wait, I thought we were
Ones
leaning
that are
towards,
Not shared would.
yeah, okay.
and by, I mean, by the way, that helps enable more parking, which
Mhm.
reduces the need for street parking.
That's valuable.
Okay.
Good.
Nicholas, you had some discussions about garage space in FAR and noting that it wasn't usually included, but I think you were okay if it made sense or,
What I'm okay with is, as part should, does not include garage space, it's usable floor area. It's not floor area. If we've decided to apply FAR as including whatever the floor is, and we've done that in the housing element, then we ought to be consistent. But a floor area ratio shouldn't include, it doesn't typically include garages and engineering rooms and elevators and things like that.
And it doesn't, and we haven't
It
changed.
doesn't.
Yeah.
is that just a matter of calling it out in the definition or
Oh, no,
we don't
no,
have to say it at
no,
all?
that's-
Just
that's-
saying something.
Okay.
Yes, but
Okay.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, all right. So you're happy.
No.
Okay. Oh, and then the other one after, because we had one, obviously the ratios in LAR and on page 35, we get the LAR ratio and the IR ratio that we needed to change the numbers. And then there was also a notation of, on impervious area ratio, we have a typo on the 2 units per acre should be 0.09 versus 0.90. In the notes.
No.
You said something about
note?
no constraints.
I think the estimated developmental area there is general enough that I think it's okay the way it is.
But I hate this last sentence that says the density FAR LAR are anticipated to be calculated on estimated developable area. I think either that needs to be the rule, but I think I understood from Adrian that we can't put that in, or we need to take that out. This seems to lead people to believe something that we can't.
At some
shouldn't
point,
do.
somebody suggested just deleting the whole.
Delete the last sentence.
Yes. But I do have nervousness. I think what Ronnie was saying, you
Right.
take the 4 units per acre times 17 acres, it's 68 units. Okay, yes, we think we put in, other constraints, so you can't do it, but, I'm always nervous about, not Stanford, of course, but just anybody that owns a property being, what if we didn't, completely analyze those shapes and the creek setback and the Alpine Road setback and, oh, somebody can build a skinny one-room thing.
Well,
you
and
know?
it's not only the number of units, it's the coverage area ratio.
Oh, right, can be
it's the,
huge. Right,
Impervious area.
right.
Everything is like all of a sudden.
A big number now.
Basically unlimited.
But this doesn't tie your hands one way or another. The sentence says it's anticipated they'll be
Well,
calculated based on that. It doesn't say they must be or
We
shall
want to
be.
say that it must be, but we gather are unable to.
I would strike both of the notes, just in the entirety. I'm not sure that it's really appropriate to talk about individual parcels within the context of the zoning section generally. And it feels like the spot
Any
zoning.
reason to keep this?
No, I'd prefer they not be there.
Okay. In fact, I think even.
Because I think
didn't
they
Tim-
add more, the discussion makes it clear they add more confusion than.
Right, they don't help.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay,
Right.
okay. And then I think even Tim said he wasn't worried about the zero, so
yeah. He
Scratch 'em both.
specifically
Okay.
didn't care about that.
I'm not sure where that came from to begin with, but whatever. Okay, scratch them.
Got it.
And it's,
Page 36.
I guess
Brandon?
we just move on, but I mean, for Glen Oaks, it means that the limits are through the roof.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with that too. I don't have a solution, but
Is there a constraint in the housing element? Because that does discuss the estimated, anticipated for approximately 4 acres. Can you fall back onto what's in the housing element?
Well, our commitment is 16 units, and that's what we anticipate is generally what the landowner would consider developing. But none of this is, 100% like binding, meaning
But I
developer
mean, that's
must
where,
do this.
can we put in something that's binding? You're saying we can't. We can't say that the,
I think legally
acreage
we
of-
can't do that.
why
'Cause I think
can't we?
it would limit property rights. The controls we have are the density that we've stated and all of our development standards that we're laying out.
so if we want to picture what can go on there, our only limits right now are the height and the 75-foot setback and, the creek, which is pretty far back though, if you're working, on that fat section of it. Then as Ronnie says, the, bar and car are huge. You could build a pretty big block of.
We also, we built in the unit size restrictions.
Okay, that's
It's
good.
something.
No, where?
On
Those
page-
are all based on acreage, right?
On page 34, we just say unit size, minimum 400 square feet, max 1,800 square feet.
Unit size, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that was to control for large sort of estate style.
Right. If this is max 2,500 though, right? We're talking about RMF 4.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Pardon me. Yeah.
Okay, but they could have any number of those.
Yeah, I have a lot of discomfort with this. Here we are picturing a few number of units, but we're legally writing it. Be a lot of them, a lot of units.
So what would you do? Would you leave the first sentence, both sentences?
But the problem is we can't write the sentence that
Right.
we, that would actually achieve the goal.
Right, I don't
Well,
like
they-
the
they
sentences.
sort of express an intention.
They are. They are.
They don't find anything, but they express an intention and an anticipation. But either way, I'd be more inclined to leave number 1 than I would number 2. Number 2 is easy to get rid of. He said something funny. The column.
Hmm. No, I don't have a good idea.
They'll open if you don't put anything.
If people are not comfortable with open, from what I can tell.
You guys know the housing. element better than I do, so maybe this is laid out in, you know. Maybe the solution is to find out exactly what the wording is in the housing element.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
And I think it probably makes sense
Yeah.
either to recognize that we're going to see this again, get a recommendation, or if we can do it seems like a mistake to try and resolve this and leave the housing element and do it in real time.
Right.
Yeah.
This, it's a real issue. It's resolvable.
So what was your thought when you looked at the housing element?
I mean, this was the attempt at resolving it.
I think
It
basically
basically-
there's probably learning to be had from the housing element, which would create a nominal land use control. Plus, we also, in fact, do have defined setbacks. Other constraints that are really going to ultimately define what you can do with the property until somebody actually goes through and uses a waiver and blows it up anyway.
We're picturing, we say, and we think all of us have been thinking, oh, 4 dwelling units per acre. Is there some way we can say it's only zoned for 4 units on each acre? Because that's what we've been thinking. And then, many of the acres, you can't build on because creek setback, road setback, weird shaped property.
We don't want to do that because that precludes keeping the horse operation and building a cluster of units on a small area.
Because the 4 acres included the horse, that's where the horse thing is. Yeah.
I would like to just keep I'd like to keep this the way it is.
I don't think it hurt anything to have it there.
Why don't we leave it the way it is, and then we're going to end up revisiting it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then
And
And I
when you're-
do want to make sure it truly is, this says in accordance with the housing element, I want to really make sure that's it.
right, I mean, we ought to just go and make sure that that's right.
Well, it is. Well, yeah.
And
we
then
should-
take out number 2.
Take that number
Take
2.
out
number 2.
Okay. Okay. And by Nicholas, when you said revisiting it in the future, we were talking in the next couple of days, or are you thinking really the future?
No, and what?
Just to-
This path is gonna come back to us next week, or assuming.
Yeah.
The week following, and we'll resolve the issue at that point in time. And we'll
Okay.
have given-
Okay.
We'll be able to give it some thought.
Okay. Well, that's good. I just wanted to make sure we weren't doing a kicking it to the future list.
No, we're kicking it to the near future.
So
Perfect.
there's One thing. Okay. So 2 things.
Let's see, page 36. Well, 36, we have to just fix the daylight plane, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, in number 2, we got rear, there isn't a rear. We need to be clear about that it's at the, is it at the property line or the setbacks? Whatever, we gotta be clear about which one it is.
Usually the property line.
Okay, well, it needs to be consistent with our current, right?
Yeah.
Is the intention. And then, of course, we put the vertical, horizontal changes and the picture changes. And that replicates also on page 37 at the top.
That maybe I have to change this picture at the very top at 40. It doesn't have there.
I haven't got there. Wait a minute, one more. For 30, page 39, there was a discussion, the very last line on clear height. And we talked about it being unobstructed. Are we okay with that? But we didn't need to change it.
I can live with the clear height.
I mean, I don't know if we can add on, I mean, I don't know that it seemed like it was,
It's,
it's
for
a
what
s-
it's worth, it's common.
it's a common
terminology.
term. I think we leave it that way.
Fine, leave it.
Okay. Next comments I had were on page 42. Building colors, and somehow we got into many times talking about four colors.
Yeah.
And I think we were trying to just,
It was actually related to the C where it says materials with intrinsic naturally occurring
Yes.
colors, materials with pre-finished color and such as stucco and colored metal shall not count towards the maximum.
of four.
I just felt the maximum
Yeah.
felt, what are you referring, the maximum of what?
And so-
That's kind of where the of four
Right.
colors came
Wait.
in. but-
Did you read C as it said shall not count? Because I don't see the word not in there.
Did I say shall not? Oh, I'm just having trouble seeing the,
okay,
there's
okay.
a glare on the screen.
It does count towards the maximum.
Shall count towards the
D
maximum.
Should be deleted, and on C, after the word maximum, it should say.
A maximum of,
Maximum of 4 colors.
Right.
Period. Okay.
because all those other items could
Remember
have
that
colors.
discussion? How we could have that discussion.
Oh, well, just got shifted.
A maximum of 4 colors.
Yeah. Okay, page 43. We were talking about driveway access and Ronnie made a point about have we considered safety when we were worried about traffic on the number of driveways. And there was a discussion of Alpine access as possibly being why we had that number.
I'd like to propose to remove the constraint on having only one driveway.
Actually, yeah, I want to talk about, one of the key things the ASCC has looked at is for single family houses, you can only have one driveway. And they even make people that have a historical view, when they remodel their house, they make them go down to one because people feel like more roads into the road you drive on is less rural. And the bike safety feels like every time you pass a driveway, you've got to be on alert. So I sort of hate to see this changed. I like if you got more than 10 units, you need 2 ways, but I kind of like the ethos of the one driveway.
Well, anybody else?
I tend to agree with Anne because I just am so worried about the bigger traffic picture that we're not looking at at all, and the bicycles and everything. So I like it the way it is.
Yeah, I think it's less safe to constrain to one driveway.
More safe. Fewer driving.
I think that that's been the traditional thinking. There's a general prohibition having multiple outlets.
Yeah, but that's for single family homes, not 10 units.
Ronnie, are you thinking of safety for the residents of that development to get out? Whereas the rest of the committee is thinking of the safety of those using the road, the existing roadway.
Yeah, I mean, I think having one driveway and you have cars coming in, cars going out, it's more likely to have a collision that way.
Oh, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So you prefer
think it-
one-way entrance and one-way
Yeah.
exit? Is that what you're thinking?
I think we should not preclude someone from building that, yes.
Does it hurt if we don't mention it?
Meaning, like,
That we're not specifying driveway?
sorry, I don't know what you mean. Currently, it says maximum of one driveway for developments up to 10 units, and we're suggesting what?
I was trying to decide if we actually needed it here.
Oh, yeah, no, if we, I mean, it was, yeah, we can remove it. I'm fine with that.
If you completely remove all of it, then you're gonna end up with the issue with townhomes all on the street with each one will have a driveway. So I would recommend you go to 2 max, period, not specify the number of units. It would also fit better probably with the fire department, which may require an entrance and an exit for the fire truck in some cases. You know, or they require big turnarounds and.
Yeah.
But I don't agree that, like, if it's 4 units, I think 1 driveway is fine, or 5 units. I mean, maybe rather than change it number, maybe instead of up to 10, maybe up to 5 or something. If what you're concerned about is the internal people getting in and out, I'm more worried about all the driveways that we're gonna have on the public road.
I mean,
I don't understand that concern because it's the same number of cars, right? So why would having more driveways make it less safe?
Every driveway's got that many more bicyclists and everything. Maybe that many more points, that many more points. That's what causes traffic to slow, is the number of points, not really the number of cars. The ways might make sense for like 10 units, but I don't think that makes sense for 4 or 5 units.
Not even sure it makes sense for 10 units. And if we have windmill that has 1 ingress and egress.
Which is terrible. I mean, getting in and out of windmill is totally unsafe. Don't do it every day. All right, no, I don't do it every day, but I do it often.
I call it a question.
We spent an awful lot of time thinking about that. And we talked to traffic safety people who assured us that having multiple points of ingress and egress would produce a less safe patrol road.
Anyway, so I think I know you disagree. Looks like you are in a minority there. So I think the only question is, do we leave it exactly as it is, or is it go the up to 5 units or something?
I'd rather leave it exactly the way it is.
I'm flexible on the 10 and 5, 10 or 5 units.
Okay.
I mean, I'm very happy the way it is if we have a traffic expert or a traffic safety committee says you've got it wrong. I'm happy to learn something. But, and it feels like kind of a technical issue, and you feel like we've been schooled on it. But I'm ready for somebody to explain why I'm saying it's wrong.
Can we ask staff if there's a best practice?
We can
Traffic
definitely,
safety.
We can check on that.
No, I
I
just
think.
mean the people that.
So
are
so we'll
online
try
right
to
now.
get some more. So I guess we'll.
Ronnie, I'd be happy
I just
to
mean
go
right-
and punt
right now.
on this until next week.
Oh, Nick, right now? I don't think we have anybody, do we?
Why? No, not, I mean, we have people that do zoning codes.
I'm happy to take input.
Maybe Monica and David, if you have a view on this, as like as a best practice, generally speaking, should we limit driveways according to units? Or just general?
So a lot of times we'll say like if there's a if you're trying to limit driveways off of Alpine, you might say like, if there's another right of way from which you can access the site, then the driveway has to be there, meaning like a side street.
I can't hear what
If
you're
it's a
Monica,
parcel that-
I can't hear
Monica,
what
you're
saying.
drifting in and out.
Oh, sorry about that. I mean, one thing you can do is say that if there's an alternate right of way that can provide access to the site, like if it's on a corner, that you know, limit one driveway along Alpine. If the site is not on a corner and there's no other roadway that can provide access, I mean, one is okay provided it's wide enough. You know, provided it's wide enough for two-way traffic and provides enough visibility I don't know. I don't think
Okay.
the fire department is gonna have a hard time with it either way. It's up to you, really.
Okay, we'll try to get some more input on this and bring it back in the next meeting. Let's see, page 44. We were trying to make this all consistent, right? Sorry, required conditions. We got into whole discussions of requirements with safety and forestry and
Item C.
item
there.
C, we were
I
trying to
would
make
just propose
consistent.
to strike that
Did we strike it?
clause.
We didn't end up striking it all,
I
right?
agree with striking
What?
C.
We ended up striking it because it's covered elsewhere.
I don't know about, I mean, that's what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, okay.
So good.
No, but the general rule, so why are we including it? So we're striking C.
And then any other instances that it appears.
Yes.
Also
Yeah.
strike it.
Exactly.
Exactly. Now, moving into,
If anything, it's 49.
I have a 48.
Oh, okay.
On 48 in the notes, under 3, we said that should be fronting Maythorpe.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's number, below the table in the notes, note number 3. Oh, red page number 48.
48.
Sorry,
Got it.
red page, sorry about
Okay.
that. Red page number 48, we had noted in note number 3,
Yep,
that it should be fronting.
that's right. We've got that.
And so additionally here, I think this is where Bob Adams has raised the concern that this says housing units. And so I would propose we change it in some way to,
Units or
All
development.
units?
Or Personally.
I don't know, commercial, housing and commercial, or just units. Whatever staff's recommendation on the best way to handle that is.
Development.
I'd have to take a look back at the housing element because it's the housing element that makes
Ah.
that statement. So I believe we were replicating what the housing element said.
Yeah, that's.
But why
important to
can't
check
we,
that.
even if the housing element said that, why can't we add,
I suppose we could.
We could.
We could say
Yeah.
housing units and mixed use developments. I mean, whatever.
Mixed use development's fine. Or mixed use
or just
development
units,
on,
I guess?
on 40%.
Tends to get away
Can we
from
just
the
say
words
units?
of-
Can we just delete housing?
I think because we have housing units in the housing element. I'm
Okay.
just thinking if we say units, I suppose not, because it's
Anyway.
inclusive.
Housing and commercial. unit?
Right, right. So I think that's actually safe. I don't think it conflicts. Okay,
But you will fix facing to fronting and you will
Yes, yes.
check the
Yeah.
housing element.
Yeah.
And figure out how to cover it.
Okay.
Okay, and then when we get down to B, we've got the whole daylight plane thing to be
Right.
fixed again. On page 49, the top of the diagram has to be fixed. Now, if we move forward to page 50, still working with it. Oh, this is another one where we had to fix it,
Okay.
make it consistent. Okay, page
Wait,
56.
50, are we deleting like KLM? Is that what?
Oh, sorry, I thought that we were being consistent. Yeah, I had it, my little notes had deleting L and M.
And K, did you say that?
A was,
yeah.
yeah,
KLM
Mhm.
are all scratched.
right. Right, right. Moving forward to page 56. Affiliated housing. And we were working on the appropriate way to word what we meant. So locally, we decided wouldn't, it could be anywhere. Local was, could it be up to San Francisco or down to San Jose? So that didn't work. We tried putting in existing town of Portola Valley. And then the question is, well, Would Stanford be included in that?
I think locally was fine, and there's no risk that Google or whoever just automatically gets included because
It has to be
I will
approved.
not, I will not go with locally. But what I would do is, I mean, I can get outvoted, I'm sure, but it does say town of Portola Valley hyphen based. I guess you could take out the based and then somebody like Stanford would still fit in, but they would be existing.
Ladera Church is eligible for affiliated housing, right? They're not actually in Portola Valley. They're a Portola, so for them, they're Portola Valley based, right?
Yeah.
They're actually only based because of the property that's in.
I mean, you could just strike the whole thing and just make it say incentives for institutions and employers. We don't even need to say where they're
I
located
don't
or
want it
based.
to be that wide open because although Google might not want to come here, they might be able to if we leave it that wide open.
I don't
No,
think
but
that
they
legal
can't
aid
become
makes
part of
a
the program.
difference at all, because I think the whole idea of having a geographic based preference for housing is probably not legal anyway. So I wouldn't worry about Google or
you think the whole-
Stanford. I think the whole proposition is problematic.
The whole affiliated housing.
I think that the
Totally.
whole Portola Valley, you've got to love us better if you live here, is if you're institutionally affiliated with town, it isn't a thing. And it's,
I don't understand what you're saying.
what I'm saying is that you can't draw a preference based upon geography, the nature area. You have to show equal respect to institutions regardless of where they are headquartered or located. The notion that Portola Valley can be more gracious to Portola Valley
Can we have,
is
Well, but
current-
that's the whole point of this
it's not,
section.
it's not. I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the whole point of the section. I think that's what it says. And we also have either a policy or an ordinance that says that 50% of local concerns have to be locally surveyed. That's not a thing either, or that's not a permissible thing. But it's what it says, and trying to keep Google out based upon this language, based whether it's is local or.
currently we have an affiliated housing program that some institutions are members of and some are not. So for example, Roberts Market, I think is not a member. They're local, so local is not a factor. I mean, I don't know if you're suggesting that the entire program is invalid and all institutions would automatically.
I think that it's push came to shove, and that's the case, probably. But that's beyond the scope, but I think there's angels on the head of the tent is what I think.
So I'm sort of heading towards, if this was just pulled from existing documentation, that we just replicate the existing documentation,
Me too. So let's scratch the red words.
which Lindy won't like, but
Like, I don't like leaving locally, you know, just because it's so
Wait,
broad, but
that was red, don't we, maybe I'm having trouble reading this.
The
What
red was the cross.
The
It
red is
it
the
used to say
cross-out.
locally.
It
and
did say-
It's red
I see.
because the red. team crossed
Because it
out.
got taken out.
I
Got it, got it.
could take out all the other additions if locally was taken out too. How about?
So
I'm
just-
in favor of leaving locally since that's how it used to be written and we worked with this for a long time.
But Linda, you were
think-
saying
I think-
it would just say incentives for institutions?
Yeah, so I wouldn't add the geography of locally. the
Yeah.
Confusing geography of locally, yeah,
Yeah.
just.
I'm good with that. That's what I suggested before.
so it just becomes So it's.
Take out the red edition, and then I guess what Lonnie is saying, take out locally as well, would be my preference.
So then it just says establish incentives for institutions and employers.
Yeah.
I feel like that misses the.
Seems harmless.
That is what it
So-
is,
so
right?
we- so
Some,
we-
some are local, some are
That,
not.
that would be accurate. And Linda,
Okay.
these are all the waste transfer
right.
station
Alright.
cases
All right.
from New Jersey and New York.
So we're scratching all the red.
That's the genesis of-
Scratching all the red. This is, sorry, it's A.
And also the word base, that isn't red, but
Yeah.
that makes no
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. So
Agreed.
we're scratching locally existing town of Portola Valley and base. So it just goes. Yes. Correct. Yeah.
Scratching the red edition.
Okay. And I think, that probably replicates in B too, the very next 1829-020B.
A change to D is okay, and then 020B, it's the same change.
Okay.
The other changes are just clean up capitalization.
Okay, page 57. We are down, we're in 1829-060 under C. And Nicholas, you made a point about this being incredibly open.
Also not numbered, which is always troubling.
Would describe it.
Yeah, I agree. Pick an unnumbered paragraph and a bunch of numbered paragraphs.
So it's the very last part of C that doesn't have a number.
That starts, the planning commission may establish.
Striking. We're just striking that. Yep. I have some notes here on page
We've got,
67.
62 on.
Oh,
18,
62?
And that's the swapping out allowed to require.
Yeah.
18.60.030A.
From the last line of A. Or otherwise required by
Yeah,
state law. Otherwise, so just allowed becomes required by.
period.
Yeah. I move forward to page 60.
You're right. That's your suggestion. Just put a period after, housing. unit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not following that one. What's that one?
So this is, 18.60.030.
Right.
And so I said required by, state law. And Linda pointed out that if we just put a period after element, then if state law requires you to
Oh.
do something different, then it's going to.
Then it doesn't have to, we don't call it out.
I mean,
Oh,
this is
so
totally
they're
redundant.
saying,
It's gonna do.
all right, so that's a change, Adrian. It was basically period after housing element and scratch or otherwise allowed by the
Right.
state. Yeah, because it has to apply anyway,
Housing element, period. Delete the rest of the sentence.
right? Page 60, page 67. And we had this issue of it's clearly subjective,
But we
but
were
it's
gonna
existing.
leave it because
We're gonna- it's a
it's,
future.
we've been,
Okay.
living with it. The things on page 67 are just our existing code. So the fact that they're subjective, we don't have to fix that right now. If we add new things, they could not be subjective.
Let's see. That is everything.
Mm.
Oh, the maximum floor size. Sorry, we got to deal with the maximum floor size of, leasing property because we're out of compliance. So it would be, all right. So right now, there's a maximum in multi-use, right? It limits the floor area that would actually put the leasing property into non-compliance if we were to do that.
Can we go to that table
Yeah,
and see
I-
what line it is?
So,
I think we corrected that
you think
in the
so?
subcommittee. We took the advice of
Oh.
the
I-
0.22.
I didn't think a decision was made on that.
No, this was the maximum, right?
If you go to the table,
Where's the, okay.
I think the recommendation was to increase it to 0.22 or something.
I don't remember that now.
So this is on red page 47 or 48, I suppose, because that's mixed use.
Yeah, see right there, right, the page up, the next page.
But-
Yeah, right up there, non-residential use, max 0.22. We had just increased it to what the consultant's memo said.
But I thought we were talking about the ground floor level for a single building. Yeah, so this is, so it's page 47 and it's the gross ground floor level area for a single building. And we've got it at 3,000. But that is significantly less than the current building that's there, the commercial building. And the recommendation was that we at least cover the building that's there, so he doesn't get into a non-conformance position.
And what is that size and why did this change from 7,500 down to 3,000?
I can answer the thought was it's approximately 6,400 square foot, although we haven't verified that.
Why not go back to 7,500 then?
The original 7,500 was based on a request from Jim White for his property. We weren't thinking about the commercial at all when that number was put there.
And now it doesn't apply to him at all.
Right.
Because
Now it doesn't apply to him. So that's
Doesn't-
why we switched it to 3,000, but we weren't thinking in terms of
Right.
the commercial.
So do we know what the square footage is now?
The estimate is 6,400, but we don't have that verified.
Then we should replace 3,000 with 6,400 and zero. Is that what you're thinking, John?
Well, that's the recommendation we have. I'm looking towards the ASCC as I'm
There-
kind of think we want them to weigh in on it.
There was also the issue of townhomes
Yeah, on the back.
in the front,
Oh, the townhome in front, yeah. Yeah.
because we needed more floor area for that as well. So, I mean, I think it's up to the committee here or the commission here to just put a number that they would feel comfortable with. In the town, if 7,500 is comfortable, then that's,
I could go for 7,500.
Me too.
7,500 it is. So
Uh-oh, did Nicholas have a conflict?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, he's good with that. eh?
Let's
Two.
pull out some-
Well, that was the last thing, right? In terms of on this stuff.
Trying to remember, I think the FAR
Yeah.
was also in question.
So
We recommended a revised FAR as well. A higher FAR.
Oh, I thought we went with that. That's the one I thought we agreed to.
FAR. Oh, we did.
We
We
did
did
fix that.
capture
We
that
did
one.
fix that.
Okay, super. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah, no, we fixed
Okay,
that.
okay.
So that's all of that. I think we're done with this section. You know, I did have, trying to have a discussion on, oh, we should get Nicholas back.
Right.
Excellent.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
all right.
Thank you for removing yourself. So I did have us down for this, potentially talking about this future consideration. I'm thinking we don't need to do that tonight. If everybody is along with that. And by the way, the package did have the wrong version anyway, because I gave the wrong attachment in my email to, Adrienne. So the newer one is sort of covers some of this stuff, and I think I wasn't gonna try to take any action on it tonight because I want the ASCC to have a chance to review it anyway. So I'm thinking we don't review this tonight.
At our next
It's,
meeting, it should be part of our package.
Yeah.
Agreed, agreed.
Okay, so we'll include it, the correct version in the next packet
Yes.
and then, okay.
Yeah.
What are you envisioning doing with it?
That was part of the discussion.
Okay. I guess we can
I
defer
think
it, but
I think in general, there are clearly items that both the AFCC and the Planning Commission sort of feel like, we've run across this as something we should work on sometime. It needs to be integrated with the entire, town priorities. They might have some other things for us to work on, but there are certain items that we think we would like to work on. Was town staffing to consider and working with them in terms of how, because everything we do seems to require a fair amount of involvement by staff. So it's sort of a consideration, was where I was going. People, that was kind of what I was hearing people wanted to do, is to make our sort of views officially known on that.
I guess I feel like we haven't really had much of a discussion about most of that list, and there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm not really
Well,
in favor of, but also I would prefer not to. It's also a very long list, and it doesn't seem that useful to me for the town council because there's so much stuff on it.
Right.
So I guess my preference would be to defer even creating that list to a separate process, like have a meeting dedicated to doing that, but not make it part of the current effort.
I think when you spend all the time going through this like we have, and you find these sort of obvious omissions and obvious problems, I feel like I have a responsibility to bring it to other people's attention and not let it slide away. If somebody else wants to decide, hey, you don't have to fix it, that's their position. And I mean, a lot of those things on there actually are comments that you've made in our meetings about things. They may not be fully written out because this was sort of ancillary to all the work that John was doing, but we were at least trying to get place markers for all of those things. So whether it goes to the town council or not, it's going to be part of our record. And I really think we should address at least a handful of those things.
So here's what I would propose though, which is, that's the kind of discussion we need to have in terms of should we move it forward or not? And I feel like since we indicated when we established a subcommittee that we would also keep track of these items, that we should at least discuss that. I gave you my rough idea of how I thought people were going, but it's open for us to discuss as a group as to how we do that. We don't have a lot of processes for introducing our priorities into the town. So
I suggest that we do have a process and we can talk about it.
Perfect.
It might make sense that we have a resolution first to move the zoning code forward. And then we can also have a separate reso.
Oh, yeah.
Letter.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Of
that
course.
way we wouldn't bind it and create an any more of a challenge for members of the planning commission.
And we wouldn't slow down the first resolution because we
No.
still needed to
Yeah.
discuss the items
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
second.
Yeah, totally.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
And are we ready to make the resolution tonight with our conditions that are gonna occur?
I didn't hear you. I heard we were gonna have a next meeting, but we hadn't picked out the next meeting yet. We have the subcommittee get back together, trying to figure out if we can do here's what I thought we decided. We were gonna go through it in detail tonight. We're gonna have that gives us 90% of what we would do. That's what gets published on Friday, based on just integrating what we have. We noted 3 or 4 items, I think, for it to follow up to try to bring back into the next meeting. But I think we are trying to have the next meeting. And I guess we'd go for the Wednesday.
I think so. Hold on.
Sounds good. It shouldn't be
And
that
we-
long of a meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to ensure that though. Could we focus, the next meeting is only these 4 items or so that needed more discussion? I'd hate for us to go over the same list. Yeah, do you think,
Totally.
Just
this,
the
this
remaining-
set of lists got
Yeah.
put to bed as long as it gets drafted? No surprise comes up in the drafting.
I'd
But
like
then-
to have a resolution on the eighth.
Yeah.
Or as soon as the AFCC joint entity can get itself together, or if we want to send it to the AFCC and
Mhm.
I think that we're now at the conversations of whether they're going to give it to the subcommittee or the AFCC.
Mhm.
And we can then decide to give it to the AFCC and then we can have a meeting. But I think moving forward very swiftly, I think is what we should do. And I also think that it will give an opportunity, having another planning commission meeting, give an opportunity for members of our community to weigh in. As it's now 11:45, and we started late. There's a little bit of sanding to do.
So we agreed then we'll try to convene the subcommission to bring a couple of those items back. Make a recommendation on what to do. What objective is on the 8th to try to move it forward.
Right, with the things we discussed tonight, get into the Friday package, if Adrian can do it. And the subcommittee info gets here by 7 PM Tuesday to all of us in the committee. So we have the 24 hours for the special meeting to look at it. I don't like getting things 24 hours, but if it's only 4 things, I can.
Yeah.
Do that.
And the agenda's not gonna be anything new.
I guess it's technically a continuation. Okay.
Continuation of the narrative.
No, thank you.
And also, and just to be clear, so we're going to be focusing on the 4 open items, which will be clarified in a moment. But, but we have the housing element, we have the zoning code. And if there are comments from the community, we will of course consider all of, suggesting it's,
Mhm.
that we have some specific business that we address, like, and such other matters as.
But that's why we're sending it out on Friday in the
Yeah.
packet,
Yeah, exactly.
usual.
Exactly. So,
I think
but just to address the issue, the 4 items that we have.
Yeah, I've got them written down. I'm not interested in talking about them anymore, unless the rest of you want to.
I'm interested in enumerating them.
I'm not interested.
All right, Mr. Chairman.
And
Move
I-
we adjourn.
Wait, are we
Okay,
not gonna
I
do minutes?
assume we're gonna skip minutes.
Gotta
Pretty
do
tired. Did anybody have any comments on the minute?
But mine's
I do.
very short. Oh,
You do?
mine-
All right, let's try to do the minutes real quick.
Chair, if I could just interrupt, I just want to make sure there's been a motion and a second and a vote to continue the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
I make a motion that we continue the public hearing to Wednesday, May 8th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Catherine. All right,
She was so
minutes.
awake.
Yeah. Minutes. Oh, I have to do public comment? On the minutes.
But we first discuss them.
We
and
gotta
then-
discuss it first, though. Yeah. Okay. So, no, let's skip them. Let's skip them.
Okay.
All right, let's skip them. Let's skip them. Sorry. Ronnie's up for it, but the rest of them are fading.
So what does that mean? That means,
That means we're motion to adjourn.
but the minutes will be,
Discuss next.
We put them in,
time.
yeah, you just roll them forward.
I'll probably have another set by then as well.
Okay. Okay, so may I make a motion to adjourn?
A second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.